I'm the employer here. I own this business. And that one of my employees started trying to convince everybody that they should become Satan worshipers or Catholics or QAnon followers, some religion, right? And just, constantly was talking about it and had paraphernalia all over their desk, and everybody was coming and complaining to me. And, right now under the law, I could say to them, stop it. Your coworkers do not want to be evangelized. So, give it up, go someplace else, become a preacher. But Donald Trump just issued a memo yesterday. Now, this only applies to federal the federal workforce. But Donald Trump issued a memo saying that, federal employees, this came out of the Office of Personnel Management, the OPM, quote, provides clear guidance to ensure federal employees may express their religious beliefs through prayer, personal items, group gatherings, and conversations without fear of discrimination or retaliation. They go on to say employees may engage in conversations regarding religious fellow employees, including attempting to persuade others of the correctness of their own religious views. Now, I have no problem with people saying, hey, I'm Catholic and I love the Pope, or, I'm a Buddhist and I'm a big believer in peace, or, I meditate, I'm into transcendental meditation, or, just kind of talking about their religion in passing or as part of a, or I have to take Saturdays off, I'm an observant Jew or a Muslim for that matter. I would have no problem with that, and I don't think most people would. But that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about evangelism. This is talking about basically harassing your fellow workers. The director of the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, his name is Scott Kupor, K-U-P-O-R. I think I'm pronouncing it right. He said in a statement, quote, federal employees should never have to choose between their faith and their career. Well, which is a really kind of weird statement when you think about it. I mean, does that mean that if you can't, in your workplace, try to convert your fellow workers to your particular religion, that you have lost your religion? Seriously? That, if some, by the way, how's this going to get used? I mean, are we going to start seeing federal employees who are followers of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster wearing their colanders on their heads, which is the kind of, what they do, to work? Are they going to have, his noodly eminence on posters on the wall? What about the Satan worshipers? This is where these guys always break down, right? Because when they do stuff like this, when they talk like this, when they put into place rules like this, what they're thinking is the evangelical Christians are going to be happy, they're going to be able to use this, and that's what we want because we're evangelical Christians, and evangelical implies evangelism, which implies proselytizing, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I mean, this is like, Roy Moore, when he was the judge down in Alabama, and saying, oh yeah, you can put the 10 Commandments on the State House lawn. No problem. We can have religious statuary here on the State House lawn. So what happens is the Church of Satan comes along and they come up with a statue of Baphomet or whatever, however you pronounce it, the goat god with the horns, sitting on his throne, who many interpret to be a version of Satan. And they say, well, cool, let us put our statue out there. And all of a sudden everybody's going, well, let's get the religion off the lawn. And I suspect that that's the direction this is going to go. Although, I mean, the federal workplace is getting pretty scary these days because they're just firing people left and right, completely ignoring civil service rules that say that if you're going to fire somebody, you have to have cause, you have to give them a reason, you have to give them 30 days to contest it, or maybe it's even longer than 30 days. You have to give them a certain period of time to contest their firing. There's a board that you can go before. I mean, there's a bunch of protections built into the Pendleton Civil Service Act and subsequent, iterations of it. And the Trump administration is ignoring these things. They're just, Elon Musk can fire you. Big balls can fire you. Anybody can fire you. And so I suspect that if people wanted to use, the Church of Satan to proselytize, or the flying spaghetti monster, or even Islam, that they would simply get fired. So maybe it won't work out the way that I'm guessing it will. The president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which, by the way, is a sponsor of this program, called this, quote, a gift to evangelicals and the myth of anti-Christian bias. Yeah.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
Book club is Trump U, Promises, Lies, and Corruption, My Battle with Donald Trump's Fake University by Art Cohen with Dan Good. This is from Chapter 1, The Art and the Deal. I was in a vulnerable place. I found myself jobless in early 2009 after my consumer electronics company went through a forced sale. I'd poured my life into Ariel Inc. You might remember our Audio Bug FM transmitters, ladybug-shaped devices that aired music from portable devices over a car radio. After Apple's iPod became all the rage, we developed, manufactured, and licensed products for major retailers and brands such as Best Buy's Dynex, Iriver, Kensington, SanDisk, XM Radio, and Delphi. Later, we looked to expand our wireless music transmission offerings with our own i21 brand, working seamlessly with the debut in 2007 of a new iPhone. Everything was going well until it wasn't. The consumer electronics industry was hit hard by the 2008 recession. Our major investor wanted to restructure the company and install new management. I was out as CEO in 2009. I wanted to find something new and fast. It wasn't a great time to be unemployed. The national economy was tanking, and to top it off, Silicon Valley isn't a cheap place to live. I worried about providing for my wife and 2 sons. At age 44, I found myself at a crossroads, an inflection point in my career. After spending 5 years as a CEO, I wanted to do something different and carve a new path. And then I came across a special invitation in the mail and a full-page ad in the San Jose Mercury News promoting an opportunity. Do you think you can profit in this market? You can, and I'll show you how, proclaimed the advertiser's headline underneath a photo of real estate developer Donald Trump. The ad promised the opportunity to learn from Donald Trump's hand-picked experts. He's the most celebrated entrepreneur on earth. He's earned more in a day than most people do in a lifetime. He's living a life many men and women only dream about, and now he's ready to share with Americans like you the Trump process for investing in today's once-in-a-lifetime real estate market. Come to this free introductory class and you'll
learn from Donald Trump's hand-picked instructors a systematic method for investing in real estate that anyone can use effectively. You'll learn foreclosure investing from the inside, how to finance your deals using other people's money. You'll learn how to overcome your fear of getting started. End quote. The ad featured a guarantee attributed to the man himself. I can turn anyone into a successful real estate investor, including you. So, why not me? Donald Trump was a name I trusted. I grew up in Philadelphia, less than 100 miles from Trump's home base, New York City. So I was familiar with his success as a real estate developer and as an author of the 1987 bestseller, The Art of the Deal. I'd made the hour-long drive to Atlantic City, New Jersey a couple times, and his last name was splashed across the casinos, T-R-U-M-P, and flashing lights. I consider the name Trump synonymous with success and wealth. At least that's what it meant for me back then. During the mid-'80s, while a student at Drexel University, I was one of the co-founding members of the D-Users, widely acknowledged as the first Macintosh users group. I was invited to a Hollywood-style event called Going National, hosted by Drexel on its campus. There, I met the legendary Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple. His inspiring talk that day imagined future computers using artificial intelligence to have conversations with the dead. Not literally, but using inputs known about, for example, Abraham Lincoln. The AI would bring Lincoln to life so you could have a modern-day conversation with him as if he were alive today. Jobs' talk inspired me to lead a team tasked during a competition with imagining the personal computer of the year 2000. There we were, to present our vision with an impressive panel. Science fiction writer Ray Bradbury, futurist Alvin Toffler, education writer and historian Diane Ravitch, computer pioneer Alan Kay, and Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. A team from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign won the competition. They envisioned a tablet device that sounded an awful lot like the eventual iPad. During a luncheon, I got to sit at a table with Bradbury, and we began talking. He was amiable. He told me how his writing career didn't take off right away. He kept at it, day by day, year by year, and eventually success and fame found him. I love science fiction, and Fahrenheit 451 is one of my favorite books. Besides my father, Bradbury probably inspired me more than anyone else as a writer, something I enjoy doing in my spare time. The Project 2000 contest was beneficial in another way. It allowed me to connect with Apple employees and give them my resume. By 1989, I was moving to California as an Apple employee. I worked as an engineer at Apple until the mid-'90s, during the time before Steve Jobs returned to the company. I left to join a company called General Magic, where I worked on product and project management. During my time there, I bumped into a French-born computer programmer who said his wife came up with an idea about selling stuff from around the house online. Everybody laughed about it. I guess Pierre Omidyar got the last laugh. His creation, Auction Web, was later renamed eBay and became one of the world's leading e-commerce companies.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Wednesday. We've got a lot to do, a lot to talk about today. In the second hour of our program, Congressman Pocan will be with us, typically on a Wednesday or every other Wednesday. He's in the first hour. We call it Middays with Mark. He's going to join us in the second hour. In our third hour, Malcolm Nance is going to drop by, the former spy, to talk about Trump and Putin, and here comes the betrayal. In our first hour, I want to get into this Strongman's test run and why the next deployment will be bigger, longer, and deadlier. And Trump says, I need a big thing to distract from Epstein. He's like calling everyone he knows. I mean, this is like downright strange stuff going on. So let's talk about, what's going on in the world. As my computer locks up for a second. Here we go. Today's op-ed over at HartmannReport.com is titled The Strongman's Test Run and Why the Next Deployment Will Be Bigger, Longer, and Deadlier. And the essence of this is, let's start with the Posse Comitatus Act. The Posse Comitatus Act is a law that was passed after the Civil War, saying basically that the Army will never turn its guns on American civilians again. It is a law of the United States. It is one sentence long, the entire law. Let me read to you that sentence. Whoever, except in cases and under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or Act of Congress, willfully uses any part of the Army or the Air Force as a posse comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. That's it. That's the entire law, the Posse Comitatus Act. If you tell the military to enforce the law, in other words, to engage in law enforcement, you go to prison for 2 years. Trump told the military to enforce the law in D.C. Last night, I was, or maybe it was this morning, I was watching one of the networks, and they had, some commentator on, and they were like, well, it looks like the National Guard's already arrested 48 people in Washington, D.C. How does that stack up to how many people are being arrested by the Metropolitan Police? I don't. And they had this long conversation. Nobody even bothered to mention that it's a felony. It's a crime. It's against the law. But Trump doesn't care about that. He's declared a crime emergency in D.C., even though, crime is down. The fact of the matter is that armies don't do policing. They are not trained for policing. Their job is not policing. The job of the military is to blow things up and kill people. As anybody who's been through basic training can tell you, it's a cliche in the military. Our job is to blow things up and kill people. It's very simple. They have no training in evidence chain of custody or arrest procedures or civil rights protections or criminal investigation or, frankly, any other aspect of policing. Sending a militia to do policing is like inviting the neighborhood butcher to perform your brain surgery. They're not qualified to do it. They're not trained to do it. They don't know what the hell they're doing. But what armies are really good at is facing down large crowds of protesters. In 2020, after Alexander Lukashenko stole the election in Belarus, over 1 million Belarusians, 1 million people showed up in the streets to protest his increasingly violent repression of dissent. He called out the military to put down the protests, killed dozens, arrested over 25,000 people, many of whom were tortured while in custody. The following year, in 2021, when there were massive pro-Navalny protests breaking out across Russia, his Rosgvardia, the National Guard. Now, this is a brand new masked militia. They wear masks. They were created just a couple of years ago by Vladimir Putin to find immigrants in Russia. They are answerable only to him. Is this sounding familiar? And he's using them basically against his personal enemies. They showed up with armored vehicles, helicopters, and troops with automatic weapons to put down the protests. Over 11,000 people were protested, many never to be seen free again. And then, of course, last year, then President Yoon Suk-yeol of South Korea declared an emergency martial law, justifying it as a necessary move to suppress what he termed anti-state forces, which was, transparently his political opposition. But because he hadn't created a militia like Putin had done, a private armed militia answerable only to him who wear masks when they go out in public, because he hadn't, previously basically stripped the military of any dissenting voices like Lukashenko had done. Lukashenko's military was entirely loyal to him. Because Yoon had not done that in South Korea, the people came out and and even the military turned against him. Well, Trump is not going to make that mistake. He is clearly reading from the Lukashenko-Putin playbook and trying to do everything he can to not go down the way Yoon did. These are test runs. What Trump is doing in Washington, D.C. today, what he's doing there right now, are test runs for when the time comes. And my prediction is that it will be next, not this fall, but next fall of next year. And I'll explain why in a moment. These are test runs for when his crimes, his corruption, and his excesses reach the point where Americans finally say no. Like they did against Putin, like they did against Lukashenko, and like they did against Yoon. And he does not want to go down like Yoon did. He wants to prevail like Lukashenko and Putin did. And why do I say it's going to be probably next November, a year from November? Because that's when the midterm elections are. And already the Trump administration has reached out to the states and demanded voter rolls and voter information. Nobody knows exactly why. They say they're looking for fraud. I think they're looking for registered Democrats. I think they're looking for people that they can target, either with propaganda, via law enforcement, or simply with programs to purge them from the voting rolls. But this has nothing to do with crime in D.C. I mean, set aside the argument that Democrats are making that, you know, crime is down and Trump is just lying through his teeth. Yes, that's true, but, you know, hey, I lived in D.C. for 7 years. Louise and I did. There are parts of town that are really genuinely scary where, you know, most of the people who live there live in fear of the crime. And they would welcome something that would solve the crime problem. But the way that you solve crime problems, as you know, Kimon Freeman was talking about yesterday on this program in D.C., is not with necessarily more police. That's not to say more police would necessarily be a bad thing. But, you know, you still have lead in the pipes in D.C. You have horrible poverty in D.C. You've got subsidized housing that really doesn't work. It doesn't have all the resources and facilities that you need. You've got unemployment. You've got illiteracy. You've got drug addiction. You've got a mental illness. You've got homelessness. Those are the things that Trump, if he wanted to solve the crime problem in D.C., those are the things he could have done. He could have addressed those issues. Instead, he's calling out the military. I mean, remember the last time Trump was confronted with protesters? It was when he wanted to do his Bible photo op in Lafayette Square during his last administration. He came out and held that Bible up upside down to take a picture. And he begged Mark Milley to shoot the protesters in the legs. And General Mark Milley said, no way, not going to do it. Well, the Mark Milleys are gone now. I'm telling you, this is preparing us. This is getting us ready. This is normalizing secret, masked, Rosgarvidia-style police who refuse to identify themselves, who abuse citizens, who routinely break the law themselves. You know, Trump got his military parade. He's threatening to revoke broadcast licenses. He shut down funding for NPR and PBS. The Trump regime is ignoring court orders, including one from the Supreme Court. I mean, this is it. This is, don't be fooled. This is, you know, first he went after immigrants and trans people. Now he's targeting poor people in D.C. Who's going to be next? You and me. We're up next. This is the Putin playbook. In fact, I think that one of the reasons he's going to see Putin on Friday is to get his next set of instructions. How do you do this again?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
16 minutes past the hour. Back with more of the news of the day and your calls in just a moment. Stay with us. And welcome back. And just a reminder, by the way, you know, we ask people to only call in once a week, but calling in to talk to members of Congress does not count against your once a week call quotient. So you can call in during the week, and you can also call Congressman Pocan in the next hour if you want. But picking up your calls right now, Mark in Signal Hill, California. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today? I'm not hearing Mark. Do we have him potted up? Okay, let's try putting Mark on hold and going to Mike in Coos Bay, Oregon. Hey, Mike, can you hear me? I'm not hearing Mike either. Is the board set up right? You're certain? And he's on hybrid A. I'm not getting this. I'm going to put him on hold. We'll try Bob in Melbourne, Florida. Hey, Bob, can you hear me? Okay, this is not working. You double check the board? When did we last have this problem? It was, yeah. I don't know what's going on with this, but we've got to fix this. Yeah. Okay, Mark, I've got you on the board, but I can't hear you. So I'm going to put you back on hold. And, let's just talk about something else. This is a fascinating story. Say what? Okay. Yeah, talk to Mateo about it first. This is an absolutely fascinating story. The guy's name is Jason Brian Gavidia. He's an American citizen. He was born here in the United States, and but he's Hispanic. And he was, quote, wrestled to the ground by ICE and taken to a detention center on Tuesday. He says, yesterday, he says, I truly believe I was targeted because of my race. He said, I believe I was racially profiled. I believe I was attacked because I was walking while brown. Now, this is a guy who voted for Donald Trump. He voted for Donald Trump. And now he says he was approached by ICE agents. This is Alexander Willis over on Raw Story. He was approached by ICE agents while at his job in Montebello, a majority Latino city, who immediately began questioning him while shoving him against a gate. The officers took his phone and ID, he said, and ultimately returned his phone, but kept his ID. Gavidia voted for Trump last year and bears a tattoo with the phrase, "We the people," on his back. In fact, he always carries with him a pocket copy of the Constitution. This guy is like, he's a patriot. He's a right-wing patriot. And this is what he had to say yesterday. The officers took his phone. They took his ID. They still haven't given him back his ID. They've apparently downloaded everything on his phone. They gave him back his phone. And this is what he says. He says, Trump ran on lies. And when you lie to us like that, when you say other countries are releasing their jails and letting them into our population, of course, you're going to scare the people. Of course, you're going to brainwash the people. This guy is like seriously pissed. He says, we were all manipulated. We were brainwashed. Now look at us. We're all suffering because of it. And I feel guilty 100%. Yeah. You think? All right. We'll be back. Stick around. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Other countries enjoy benefits like free health care in college, modern mass transit, affordable housing, food, and drugs. They also have inexpensive internet and phone service without companies listening and selling their information. Schools that don't need to mention school shooters. Streets and parks filled with pedestrians and children instead of tents and homeless people. We, on the other hand, have the world's largest collection of billionaires. Most Americans probably didn't realize this was the choice they were making back in the election of 1980 when Reagan and Bush promised morning in America. But here we are. We have been just basically sold out to the billionaires by all these years of Republican, Reaganomics. What do we do about it? Well, there's a lot we can do about it, and it starts with getting politically active. There's a great op-ed about this over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, America Chose Wealth Over Well-Being. Check it out.
Boots on the pavement, steel in the sun, shadows fall heavy where freedom once run. They say it's for safety. They say it's for peace, but the lines start to blur when armies replace police. When armies replace police, the streets turn cold and the truth's on lease. Riots fade away like whispers in the night when armies replace police. There's no end in sight. The courts are ignored, the press under fire, the laws bend and break at the will of a liar. The crowd holds their ground, the rifles don't cease. Who protects the people when armies replace police? When armies replace police, the streets turn cold and the truth's on lease. Riots fade away like whispers in the night when armies replace police.
24 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. So, according to Michael Wolff, who wrote a biography of Donald Trump and has, seems to be like, on the inside track to have inside information to what's going on inside the White House. He keeps breaking these stories. This is over at the Daily Beast's new podcast, and it's called Inside Trump's Head. And he said, well, I'll just quote. He said, "Let me go back about a week or so, 10 days, when Trump started to say to everyone who would listen, and everyone listens to Donald Trump, to staffers and on the phone calls, the relentless phone calls that he's constantly making. He said, I need a big thing. I need a big thing. What's the big thing? And everyone understood that this was code for, I need a distraction from Epstein. What's the thing that'll move us beyond that?" Wolff goes on to say that Trump decided he was going to try going after Zoran Mamdani, but he called that off. He called Andrew Cuomo and decided not to do it. Then he moved to deploying soldiers, and it's just why. And now he's going to meet Putin. Will it work? I don't know. We'll see. Mark in Signal Hill, California. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Well, I'm glad that Gavin Newsom's jumping in the ring on this fight. But I like to think outside the box a little to make it a little smoother and to give other Democratic governors an extra card to play. Why not just make everybody in the state gets to vote on every representative and senator, and with a promise to properly redistrict at the proper time. That way he can either, if the Texans back off, he can back off. If they don't, they can go full speed ahead.
Yeah. Well, then you'd end up with, first of all, you're kind of ending federalism. I mean, the core idea of federalism is that local communities govern themselves, that you want, as much as possible, you want decision-making to be made at the smallest, most local, community size possible.
Yeah, I get that. But the representatives will still represent their districts.
Mm-hmm.
I know but again, when you're talking about fighting fire with fire.
But if they're elected statewide, then in your red states, you're going to have no Democrats, and in your blue states, you're going to have no Republicans. That doesn't seem like a good
sure.
thing.
The Republican states are so heavily gerrymandered that they couldn't do that because all of a sudden the Democrats would have great increases. Anyway, just thinking outside the box.
Yeah. No, you are, definitely, Mark. Let me ponder that one. Interesting idea. Thank you very much. I'll be picking up your calls here on the other side of the break. Stay with us. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, defending America from the weapons of mass deception. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Taking back the mainstream media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, right here. We'll be right back with you. We're reading from Thomas Frank's book, Rendezvous with Oblivion, Reports from a Sinking Society. This is chapter 1, titled Servile Disobedience. Social scientists have tried for more than a century to understand how class works. Psychological experiments on the subject, however, are a relatively novel thing. Surprised to discover a few years ago that psychologists had published a series of papers on the behavioral aspects of social status, and that their findings were almost uniformly unflattering towards society's winners. In one 2009 study in Psychological Science found that in conversations with strangers, high-status people tend to do more doodling and fidgeting, and also to use fewer engagement cues, looking at the other person, laughing, nodding their heads. A 2010 paper published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that lower-class individuals, in quote, turned out to be better performers on measures of such pro-social virtues as generosity, charity, and helpfulness. A third study found that those of higher status were noticeably worse at assessing the emotions of others or figuring out what facial expressions mean. All of which is to say the rich are different from you and me. They are more rude and less generous. They don't understand, they don't get what others are thinking, and apparently they don't really care. Perhaps this is obvious to you. After all, people don't design toxic debt obligations by calling on what they learned in Sunday school. Still, the research aroused media interest. The Christian Science Monitor's 2010 account of one study ended with this quotation from Michael Krauss, then the University of California, San Francisco, who was one of the researchers, quote, "Being empathic is one of the first steps to helping other people. One of the first things we're really interested in is what can make wealthy people, affluent people, the people with the capacity to give, what can make them empathic?" I think I see the urgency of Dr. Krauss's question. After all, we have spent the past several decades doing everything we could to transfer the wealth of the nation into the bank accounts of the affluent to send them victorious, happy, and glorious long to reign after us, over us. Oh, we've cut their taxes, gladly transferring much of the cost of keeping their property safe onto our own shoulders. We've furnished them with special megaphones so that their voices can be heard over the hubbub of the crowd. We've conferred upon them separate and better schools, their very own transportation system, and a full complement of private security guards. We've built an entire culture of courtiers and sycophants to make their every working hour an otherworldly delight. We let them construct a system of bonuses and executive compensation on the theory that it would be good for everyone if the people at the top got to take home much, much more than the rest of us. And when it turned out that the theory was wrong, that in the most famous cases, executives chased bonuses not to the shareholders' benefit, but at their expense, why, we promptly bailed them out. We allowed them to step into the Fed's discount window and fill their pockets. We generously transferred their reckless investments to our balance sheet, and we chastised them with little more than a polite request that they please not do it again. We've done everything we can to lift them up and exalt them as Leviathan. The least they can do in return, one feels, is to show a little empathy. Besides, look what we've done with the old Leviathan, the government. For decades, we've attacked it, redirected it, outsourced it, and filled it with incompetence and cronies. Yes, it still works well enough when we need to blow up some small country, but those branches of it designed to help our Americans of lower socioeconomic status, in quotes, as the scientists would put it, are now bare. We need the rich to be nice. We need them to stop doodling, and to pay attention and get generous. Now that the government has divested from the empathy business, we need the rich to discover brotherly love and fast. Come to think of it, wasn't that supposed to be the deal in the first place? The arrangement Andrew Carnegie brokered over a century ago when he made his big career move from Steel King to public library baron? The laissez-faire social contract would grant private business a free hand, but in exchange, those who piled up massive wealth were supposed to extend a magnanimous hand to the rest of us. As Carnegie wrote in his famous 1889 essay, The Gospel of Wealth, we don't need socialism to solve our problems. Philanthropy is the true antidote for the temporary inequality distribution of wealth and reconciliation of the rich and poor, quoting Carnegie. Going further, Carnegie argued that the duty of the man of wealth was, quote, to consider all surplus revenues which come to him simply as trust funds, which he's called upon to administer in the manner which, in his judgment, is best calculated to produce the most beneficial results for the community. The man of wealth thus becoming the mere trustee and agent for his poorer brethren, end quote. That same way of thinking led Carnegie to support the estate tax. Of all forms of taxation, this seems the wisest, he wrote. It was wise because it would, quote, induce the rich man to attend to the administration of wealth during his life. And if he didn't, then the tax would return most of his hoardings to the community from which it came, using Carnegie's words. Vestiges of the Carnegie attitude survive to this day. 2009 study of high net worth individuals by Barclays Wealth confirmed that American philanthropists tend to understand their giving in a context in which the state is either absent or irrelevant. And of course, there are plenty of nice plutocrats who don't fidget or doodle when talking to strangers and who have no problem endowing a ward or a wing in return for a commemorative plaque. The business headlines even occasionally tell of billionaires coming together under the leadership of Warren Buffett and Bill Gates to donate their fortunes to worthy causes. But the billionaires with the strongest sense of class solidarity have a very different plan for their disposable income, activating their lobbyists in Washington, building grassroots movements to march on their behalf, and using their media properties to run experiments on human credulity. Rendezvous with Oblivion is the
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
There's a price on your freedom. There's a toll at the gate. Where the courts once stood open, now billionaires wait. They've locked the doors tight, put a bond on your plea. If you're fighting the tyrant, it ain't gonna be free. The price of fighting Trump is more than you can pay. They're selling off your justice, taking rights away. The courthouse is a fortress where the rich alone may stand. The price of fighting Trump is blood upon this land.
35 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Mike in Coos Bay, Oregon. Hey, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, longtime fan, of course. I'll make it quick. But I wanted to get this out. There was a massive movement starting online with streamers. The community used to be gaming streamers and all of that, but they turned political. And I'm talking about some of these young men have millions of listeners. What they're doing is now taking the fight to the Republicans directly. There's one streamer that is on two tours, one called the Anti-Trump Tour. That's being organized by by a specific organization. I can give the name if that's okay. Sure. It's Pangburn, P as in Paul, ANGBURN. It's called the Anti-Trump Tour. Mm-hmm. And there's one streamer he's kind of controversial, but he's one of the main voices on that, taking debates directly to Trump voters, to Trump followers, etc., talking about the Democrats. And then there's another tour that has a bad word in it. I won't say the whole word, obviously, but it's the NF, like Frank, mm-hmm. NF America Tour, mm-hmm. that's taking the fight directly to Charlie Kirk at colleges. Mm-hmm. And that's I don't hear very often what Charlie Kirk is doing and help the Republicans do at the college level. And the people who are starting to push back are these online streamers. And I'm not talking about like Hassan Piker. They're actually starting to fight against him as well, because he's one of the voices on the quote unquote far left that are looking to, for lack of a better phrase, destroy the Democrats. And remake the Democrats. So they're trying to enlargen the tent and take the fight directly to the Republicans in ways that are just not being done right now, and it's not getting enough attention as far as I'm concerned.
That's great. Have you seen the recent things from Zoran? You know, Mamdani, the mayoral candidate in New York City, where he's going after Cuomo, just ripping him up. I mean, I realize it's not the same thing, but the message that I'm getting, and I've been preaching this for 2 decades, is that what the American people want is genuine progressive positions. They want FDR and LBJ. They want an activist government. They want a government that is going to bring back the American middle class. We're, 47% of us are in the middle class now. It used to be 65% of us. They want to bring that back, and the way you do that is with, Bernie Sanders style legislation and actions and things that Joe Biden did, frankly. It's between the Republicans and the corporate Democrats, it's a real challenge. But I'm glad to hear that, Mike. I'm glad to hear that.
And a lot of these messages are to talk about the misinformation, the mis-electoral information that's out there as well about what Joe Biden did or did not do. And they're taking it directly to people on the far left, they may say, screw Joe Biden, and the Republicans. And
they're taking it to people on the far left. What does that mean?
There's unfortunately a very strong message online in this same community, but further quote-unquote left of Joe Biden didn't do enough.
Oh, I see.
There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, well, there's people who call themselves leftists who are also like, we shouldn't be funding Ukraine and that sort of thing. I mean, is that what you're talking about?
The same community.
Yeah, kind of
but clips for both of these stories can be found online, or it can be found on YouTube, so It's pretty easy.
Thanks for the heads up, Mike. I appreciate it. Mike in Gainesville, Virginia. Hey, Mike, what's on your mind today? From Mike to Mike.
Yeah. Hello, Tom. Yes. Hey. Okay. I want to start a national coffee protest against Trump's 50% import sales tax on Brazilian coffee. Mm-hmm. Everyone needs to put that message on a sign and go to your local coffee shop. Coffee is the perfect product to expose the lies Trump has told about his tariff plan. Coffee has nothing to do with bringing back manufacturing jobs. It's just Trump stealing from middle and working class voters to fund his tax cuts for billionaires. It makes clear who will pay the import sales taxes to the American consumers.
Yeah.
I will be at the intersection of Heathcote Boulevard and Cat Harpin Road in Gainesville twice a day, mid-morning and late afternoon with my protest sign. Do you like Trump's 50% tariff on your coffee?
Yeah, that's cool. Because, the fact of the matter is the only state in the United States that grows coffee is Hawaii. And they don't grow that much. Nowhere near enough to supply the needs of this country. And so the vast majority of our coffee is imported, from as far away as Colombia or Kenya, but also a lot of it from Brazil. And you're right, because Trump is trying to punish them for prosecuting Bolsonaro. He's put this massive tariff on Brazilian coffee. And I think it was day before yesterday, I was quoting statistics on this program, and my recollection is that coffee had gone from $9 a pound to $14 a pound or something like that.
It's basically been a 50% increase.
Yeah.
So so this is the perfect time to be able to get people riled up, and I'm trying to get some press coverage on this, and that's why I'm out there trying to get interviewed.
Yeah.
As everybody drives by, tell them, call interviewed on this.
Yeah. Well, good on you, Mike. I'm glad to hear that you're out there promoting that. And it's basically a pass-through, more or less, sales tax, and it's just and I think people are figuring it out. I really do. Outside of the people who watch Fox News, of course, there are always going to be the befuddled victims of the Murdoch family's propaganda, but. Mike, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Dick in Las Vegas. Hey, Dick, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, what I'm thinking back, there aren't enough billionaires to run the country. So what happened back in the 80s, they figured out they would get somebody like Reagan who listened to them and did a great job. But then they continued down, and they finally found somebody like Trump to finish it. But, man, the only thing that is happening in the country is billionaires get richer, and they need people like us because, I was brainwashed back in the early 80s, Tom, by listening to Fox News and Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, a lot of us were. A lot of people
I
were.
thought I was a flipping Republican, man. And then I was able to shake it off. But I still, to this day, have relatives and used to be friends that are still drinking the same Kool-Aid. And I don't believe enough is being said about what billionaires have done, and to put a bullseye right on, bullseye meaning here, this is who's doing it, and you got to stop believing them. So how do you do that? You know, it shows like you absolutely do it, but there aren't enough of you. And I've been hollering about this. It's at my gas station in Billings, Montana, when I owned a gas station in Billings, Montana before self-serve gas. And now I'm in Las Vegas. I'm an old guy, and and it's the same stuff. It's billionaires are doing it, and guys don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they've got a very, very effective propaganda machine that they started building in the 70s based on the Powell memo. And it works. I mean, they've got 1,500 radio stations. They've got 3 television networks. You've got Prager University. You've got all these websites. You've got Facebook, Google, and X all skewing their algorithms toward the right. You've got the billionaire-funded think tanks. There's a state policy center. Every single state has a right-wing think tank funded. You know, originally the Koch brothers funded a lot of this stuff, but now there's this huge network of donors. Trump had over 150 billionaire families who contributed more than 40% of the money for his campaign, and Biden had 3 billionaire families. I mean, you know, it's because, you know, when people get rich, they tend to want to protect that money, and you know, I think it was Robert Reich who pointed out that, you know, what's the old saying? Behind every great fortune is a great crime. That it's true. That basically the only way you can become a billionaire is by running a monopoly or by, you know, being a thief.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But how do guys talk more about?
Well,
people just aren't understanding it.
Share stuff. You know, share this program with people. Share our newsletter, the Hartmann Report, with people. There's a bunch of great progressive newsletters over on Substack. Look at my recommendations that you can subscribe your friends to. You know. Dick, I got to run, but thanks for the call. Good luck.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Exposing the con in conservative. I'll be right back with you. And welcome back. Barbara in Edisto Island, South Carolina. Hey, Barbara, thanks for watching us on Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom, that's Edisto Island. Edisto sounds nice, but it's Edisto.
Edisto, okay.
Yeah,
What's
three
up?
things. Fox News, subliminal messaging. I know Russia was doing something with that. Maybe that's how they're getting all these people's minds twisted. The other thing, too, get all these streamers online to apply for the ICE thing so that we crash their system. And number 3, I think next year we should do a tax revolt, and that in every state, the Democratic Party should have a separate bank account where we can mail our tax money to, and they hold it and use it against the government. I mean, he's just going to waste our money next year, too.
Yeah, setting up something like that would require a change in federal law, so I don't think it's going to sympathize with your idea, Barbara.
And that's really all I wanted to say. It's just, I'm just trying to think of, I don't know that the protests are really working, and now he's got the army out against us, so I'm thinking hit money with money. It may not be legal, but they're not playing legally either.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Barbara, thank you. Thanks for the call, and thanks for thinking about this. I appreciate it. Charles in Vancouver. Hey, Charles, what's on your mind today?
Hey, sir, good morning. Nice to have a respite from the heat today.
Yeah,
You know, hearing or seeing Ted Cruz after the question was asked, why does he defend Israel? And he says, well, the Bible tells me to do so.
This is not the Israel of 3,000 years ago.
No, absolutely not. Hearing Netanyahu say that the footage of all the children starving and the mass casualties and everything is fake news. And, I mean, all his minions. And, you know, right now, Palestine has the highest number of childhood amputees in the world.
Yep.
So I guess my question to you, and I'm just a year or two younger than you, and I'm in the 60s, but I really, and I know your show would never be a platform to advocate for violence, but besides a general mass strike and a conversion of the military, I think it's going to take some degree of anarchy to change what's going on. Tom, social media and all that stuff aside, you know, we can only hold hands and sing Kumbaya so much longer. And I think it's going to be almost too late. And by the way, you and Mr. Hedges, Chris Hedges, my favorite authors, but you are everything that Sean Hannity is not, which is kind, polite, intellectual, patient, and not a circus tent showman.
Yeah.
But
well, thank you, Charles.
What do you think is really? Well, you're welcome. What is really going to take the change, Tom?
My suspicion, Charles, is that Trump is going to drive us into a severe recession, maybe even a depression, and that he's probably also going to lead us into war, and that those things will be his undoing. Now, I may be wrong about this. Lincoln became a hero as a result of fighting a war. Franklin Roosevelt became a hero as a result of fighting a war. Woodrow Wilson, arguably. On the other hand, look at what happened when Lyndon Johnson decided he was going to have a war. I can't predict it, but my sense of it is that we're on the verge of those two things, of a depression and a war. The fourth turning kind of scenario. But we're just going to have to hang on here, Charles, and try to wake as many people up as we can to get ready for this. Charles, I got to run, but thanks for the call. We'll be right back.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us.
I have 8 suggestions for Democrats for messaging. Democrats seem to have a messaging problem right now. First, Democrats must frame the fight in simple moral terms. Don't be wonky like, hey, we need to expand social safety net. No, say no child in America should go to bed hungry. Second, Democrats need to stop playing defense and instead seize the populist high ground. Like when FDR said, they are unanimous in their hate for me and I welcome their hatred. Third, ruthlessly define the Republican opposition and the morbidly rich oligarchs who own them. Fourth, tell stories instead of facts. Reagan did this with the black welfare queen. He had to lie about it, but we've got lots of great stories. That's number 4. There's 4 more, and they're all over at HartmannReport.com. The title of the article is, If Obama Had Sent a Mob to Kill a Cop, Republicans Would Never Let You Forget It. And it's all about how Democrats can reinvent their messaging to start winning elections big. Check it out.
Set your coffee down, grab a chair. The airwaves are electric with civic care. This ain't just chatter or headline noise. It's your chance to speak, to claim your voice. Whether you're mad or mildly amused, there's a nation of folks who refuse to snooze. Get your questions ready, don't hold back. Whether it's taxes or train tracks, ask why the oceans keep rising high, or why billionaires own half the sky. From student debt to the minimum wage, to justice from lock in a cage. It's your mic, your turn, no need to rehearse. Just maybe skip the alien stuff, unless it's interstellar nurse union. Then yes, absolutely call.
Yeah, give us a call. And by the way, just a reminder, next hour, Ken will be with us for the entire hour taking your calls. Tomas in Rockford, Illinois. Hey, Tomas, what's up?
Yeah, I wanted to say Pete Hegseth has been purging the military of African Americans, women, gays, and transsexuals. And for decades now, Christian nationalists and white supremacist organizations, they've been encouraging their members, young members, to join the military.
Yep.
Now, you said that Mark Milley, when Trump asked him to pull the trigger, he wouldn't do it. Now, if those African Americans, women, and transsexuals and gays, they're not going to pull the trigger on their fellow Americans. They're the demographic that has experienced racism and hatred.
Right.
Now, if you got the Christian nationalists and white supremacists, when they see protesters, what they're going to see? They're going to see liberal Democrats. If there's blacks in there, they're going to see N-word, women that should be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. You see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm. I do. When Trump asked Hector to pull the trigger, he'll do
that's
it.
what he's
Yeah,
got.
no, this is my concern when he started firing all of the flag officers or all the senior officers, the generals and admirals and whatnot, who were female or who were black, and I think at least one or two who were Hispanic as well. And what he's doing is he's preparing the military for when they're going to turn their guns against the rest of us. In my opinion, that's what Donald Trump is doing. He is establishing the infrastructure of totalitarianism, of violent repression, of a fascist, and we're just watching it happen. It's pretty shocking. Tomas, thank you. I think your analysis is spot on. Bob in Melbourne, Florida. Hey, Bob, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, the deployment of the troops in Washington. Mm-hmm. You stated that it was not military police and they are not trained for it. Actually, one of the companies, which would be about 200 people, is the 273rd Military Police Company based in the D.C. area. Who the other 600 are, I don't know I can't find where they came from. I'm not getting a unit designation. Yeah. But at least I do know that the 273rd MP Company is one of the units that was called up. And being a Vietnam-era military policeman, I can assure you that they are trained in arrest and crowd control. And
where did you get that information, Bob? Because it contradicts what I read in the New York Times last night.
I got it online just a few minutes ago, and I thought I'd call you because I know how you want to be, spot on.
Yeah, so, accurate, yeah.
Trace that for yourself. But I did find that the 273rd, but again, a company is only about 180 to 200 men. So who the other 600 are, it could be cooks and bakeries.
Well, and again, this doesn't change the fact that if Trump really wanted to deal with crime, he would be dealing with the causes of crime.
Oh, whole thing's total BS.
Yeah, if he thought D.C. needed more police, he could fund the Metropolitan Police Department.
That's right. It's just another ding dong, another flaming bag of poop.
Yeah, there you go, Bob.
Anyway,
you're absolutely right. Okay, Bob, thanks a lot for the information. I appreciate it. Thank you. Caleb in Chicago. Hey, Caleb, what's up?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. I call you from time to time, and last time I called you, I told you the thing that I'm most concerned about is when ICE actually gets their budget towards the end of this year. I don't know. You know better than me when the budget actually goes in. And now that I'm listening to you right now, I really believe that this is setting up for next year. And I don't see how there's going to be a free and fair election with everything that's happening. Yeah. And if there is, and Democrats win, I do believe that martial law will be immediately implemented. And I believe, and they'll start arresting people. They're going to claim that there's a coup. And I don't see any other thing as a result of this.
Yeah, I think that scenario, Caleb, is entirely possible, and it's so many people would say, "Oh, that's unimaginable," and that would never happen. But that is the kind of thing. That was my op-ed today. That's the kind of thing that will bring people into the streets, and that's why Trump is pre-positioning the military. He tried it in Los Angeles. He didn't get the pushback that he expected. The Supreme Court allowed him to do it, or at least they haven't ruled on it yet.
Yeah. That's my point. Too many are complacent. The media is complacent. Supreme Court is complacent. I'll just leave you with this, Tom. I love this country, but I just came back from Greece. I have a house there. I've just gotten my kids their Greek citizenship. And if this really goes the way it's going, I never thought I'd say this, I'm leaving this country.
I totally get it, Caleb. Thank you very much for the call. We're hitting the top of the hour. On the other side of the break, Congressman Mark Pocan will be with us for the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Richard Wolff's Understanding Socialism. This is from the introduction. Socialism is a kind of yearning for a better life than what capitalism permits for most people. Socialist yearnings are as old as capitalism itself because they are its products. Where and when capitalism's problems and failings have accumulated criticism and critics, socialist voices have arisen. And so it is again now. Any serious discussion of socialism must begin by acknowledging socialism's rich diversity. Whatever particular aspect of socialism we choose to analyze, they need to be located within socialism's complexity. That avoids presenting one's own interpretation as if it were the entirety of socialism. In this book, I focus on the economic aspects of socialism, how it differs from capitalism in broad outlines. I'm more interested in socialist critiques of capitalism and their implications about socialist alternatives than in the particulars of the few early experiments in erecting socialist systems, USSR, People's Republic of China, and so on, that history so far offers. Finally, my own education and work constrain me to concentrate on Western Europe and North America. Some important aspects of socialism are thus not covered or discussed here. Yearnings for better lives, such as socialism proposes, are not new. In slave societies, the slaves hoped and dreamed of lives less hard and less out of their own control. Their yearning aimed to obtain freedom. They sought social change that would preclude any one person being the property of another. In feudal societies, the serfs, free in the sense that no one owned them, yearned for better lives too. Their subordination to lords included heavy labor and other burdens that they wanted lifted. They hoped and dreamed of a society in which they would not be bound to the land, the lord of that land, and the feudal dues of labor and subservience. The serfs mobilized in the 1789 French Revolution to demand liberty, equality, and brotherhood. In effect, the serfs had expanded on what the slaves had called freedom. In the American Revolution against British King George III, the revolutionaries were neither slaves nor serfs. They were mostly self-employed farmers, craftspeople, and merchants subject to a foreign feudal kingdom. They wanted liberty as individuals to pursue their dreams without hindrance from feudalism or monarchism, whether foreign or domestic. They added democracy to the goals advanced by the slaves and serfs before them. The different systems of slavery, feudalism, and small-scale self-employment produced masses of people yearning for better lives. Eventually, each of those systems provoked revolutions. Many people then sought to break away from and go beyond those systems. The French and American revolutions marked key moments in the social transformations of major pre-capitalist systems into capitalist ones.
By capitalist system, we mean that particular organization of production in which the basic human relation is employer-employee instead of master-slave, lord-serf, or individual self-employment. The revolutionaries who wanted and built capitalism hoped and believed the transition to employer-employee relations of production would bring with them the liberty, equality, brotherhood, and democracy they had yearned for. The revolution's leaders promised to themselves and to the people they led that those goals would be achieved. But the transition to capitalist employer-employee relations that increasingly replaced the previous slave, feudal, and self-employment relations of production had unintended consequences. Capitalism soon proved to be different from what its revolutionaries had hoped. While it enabled some people to be more free and more independent than slaves, serf, or self-employed subjects of monarchies had been, it also seriously limited freedom, independence, and democracy for many. Capitalism betrayed many of the promises made by its advocates. It produced and reproduced great inequalities of income and wealth. Poverty proved to be as endemic as capitalism seemed equally adept at producing and reproducing both wealth and poverty. The capitalist rich used their wealth to shape and control culture. Democratic forms hid very undemocratic content. The cyclical instability attending capitalism constantly threatened and hurt large numbers of people, and so on. Growing numbers of employees within capitalism began to yearn for better lives. They defined those yearnings first in the familiar terms of the earlier French and American revolutions: equality, fraternity, liberty, and democracy. They criticized a capitalism that failed to deliver those to most people and demanded social changes to achieve them. Many people still continue to want a better, softer, friendlier capitalism, where government regulates and intervenes to achieve more of what the French and American revolutionaries had yearned for and promised. They are also often self-defined as socialists. However, capitalism's development provoked another, different perspective that also called itself socialism. In that view, capitalism had not broken from slavery, feudalism, and monarchy nearly as much as its advocates had imagined. Slavery had masters slaves, feudalism had lords serfs, and monarchy had king subjects as their key sources of their inequalities, lack of freedom, oppressions, and conflicts. The employer-employee relation of production and capitalism generated parallel problems. Capitalism installed monarchies inside individual workplaces, even as monarchies outside workplaces were rejected. Kings mostly disappeared, but inside workplaces, the owners or their designated boards of directors assumed king-like powers. The book Understanding Socialism by Richard Wolff.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. It's time for Middays with Mark, second hour edition. Congressman Mark Pocan, representing the 2nd District of Wisconsin, current member and chair emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus, and chair of the Congressional Equality Caucus. His website, pocan.house.gov. Pocan.house.gov is also his Blue Sky handle. And Congressman Pocan, welcome back to the program. So glad to have you with us. I noticed that Donald Trump's Bureau of Labor Statistics new guy, you know, that he fired the professional statistician, and he's brought in this guy who was as of yesterday the chief economist over at the Heritage Foundation, a position that crackpot Stephen Moore, who used to come on this program and unsuccessfully debate me years ago, used to hold. And this guy has in the past called Social Security a Ponzi scheme that should be shut down, and he's now going to be in charge of our labor statistics. What do you guys in Congress have to say about this? And he's also proposing going to quarterly reports, but the law demands monthly reports. So what's up with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. First of all, everyone should know Heritage Foundation is the group that was behind Project 2025. So, you know, we continue to see what direction the Trump administration is going, but he didn't like the numbers, and therefore, you know, the king said, "Me a new jester," and yeah, that's what they did. They brought this guy but he's not credible, for one. And number two, if he's going to start trying to change how we get the statistics, this is economists around the world use this data to know how the economy is going. And if they start to skew numbers, put out reports differently, all the rest, it could have a lot of other ramifications that could affect everything from interest rates to the economy in general to hiring practices by companies. And again, another dangerous pick just so that Donald Trump can always have good job numbers.
Yeah. I'm also curious your thoughts on Donald Trump's deployment of the military to Washington, D.C. I will read you the entirety of the Posse Comitatus Act. This is the entire law, is one sentence long. It says, whoever, except in cases and under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress, willfully uses any part of the Army or the Air Force as a posse comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. Should Trump be going to prison for this? This is apparently a clear violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, and Congress has not acted to authorize this. And I get it. This is really all.
Right?
The big question is this about Jeffrey Epstein, or is this about that in November of next year they're going to try to steal the election, and if enough people come out in the streets, they want to have the National Guard pre-positioned in cities all over America to put down protests. Lukashenko, Belarus all over again. Is that where we're going?
I think it's about something else, personally. I mean, I think, his best polling message is around the border and talking about expelling criminals who are here. And he has to prove that there are criminals. He has to prove that we're a crime-ridden country in blue areas, and he's the only savior because that's what the cult needs to continue to follow him. He just passed the big ugly law that's going to hurt a lot of his cult, taking away health insurance and food assistance and other things. So I think that's the real issue. There's so few Republicans doing town halls right now for good reason. They go disastrously for them because that bill was so bad. So he wants to get back to talking about expelling criminals. He's got to prove we have criminals. I think this is a lot about that because that's his top polling issue, and his bottom polling issue is the cost of living. It's what he won on, but that's what's actually hurting him the most. So he has to distract from other things and get back to his main messaging, which is he's the guy going to expel criminals. And look, there's criminals everywhere, so many that I had to do this. And because DC has got a unique position, with the federal government as opposed to big cities, he could get away with it a little easier.
But he still has troops in Los Angeles.
Well, and again, that was part of the messaging as well. As you know, it was 3 square blocks of Los Angeles where there was this area. He brought in hundreds of people,
right,
more than you could even put in 3 square blocks of areas. But again, it adds to what he's trying to put. The narrative is that we have crime-ridden cities, and they're going to get into the suburbs and rural areas and get you.
Well,
and
that was Hitler's narrative too, though. This is the narrative of that's the excuse that Erdogan used when he came back from vacation and there was a coup going on. That's the excuse that Yoon was using in South Korea. I mean, this is what dictators do: is they say it's all about crime and criminals, but in fact, what they're doing is they're establishing the infrastructure of repression.
Yeah, and fear is a powerful motivator, as we know, right? That's how he and other Republicans often get elected. It's not on hope or togetherness or working, and getting things done. It's about fear. So I just think he may be reinforcing his strongest messaging and trying to avoid the other conversations about what they just passed. Because I think when people figure it out, as we know, it's lopsided by 20 or 30 points in every poll about people who know the bill. He would just rather we not talk about it at all.
So the Congressional Budget Office, I think most people don't even understand what the CBO is. But they just issued a report saying that the so-called Big Beautiful Bill is going to make the rich richer and the poor poorer, if I understand this correctly.
Yeah, and I think also they said 2 million people are going to lose food assistance because of the bill. I think I did not see the number offhand, but I think the last number I saw was 15 million on people losing health insurance.
Right.
But, it's even worse than that on health insurance, if I can, Tom, just real quick. I mean, when fewer people have health insurance because they're taking away the subsidies, that's the part that people will start to see the soonest for the Affordable Care Act. That's why it was affordable. So if people go without insurance into hospitals, especially rural hospitals in places like Wisconsin, they're going to get coverage, but they may not have the money to do that. So that's going to put rural hospitals at risk. That's going to raise rates on the rest of us. And that's going to ultimately raise our insurance because they're going to have to pay more for healthcare because we don't have this in place now. So the ripple effects are going to be felt. The question is, so many of the changes on Medicaid and other things happen after the next election. But those ACA subsidies are the ones to watch because that's the one people are going to start feeling, and it's going to have ripple effects. Just like tariffs take, between 6 and 18 months, we're told, to really feel the main effect in the economy. This is something that you're going to see probably starting in January, and I think it's going to be pretty devastating.
Yeah. All right. Well, so shall we pick up some calls?
Sure, absolutely.
All righty. George in Cripple Creek, Virginia, our former intelligence officer who also speaks Russian. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hey, Tom and Congressman Pocan. I've read reports that the F-35s supplied to our allies are equipped with a kill switch with the disable the avionics, and President Trump intends to use this if our allies, plan to employ the F-35s on missions he doesn't approve of. Has a congressman heard of this? And if this is true, what can Congress do to counteract that?
Yeah, I have not heard that. I don't serve on a committee, though, that deals directly with armed services. However, I did see that Switzerland and I think Spain have canceled some purchases of F-35s over the tariff issue. So, there is some still volatility on that, but I have not heard that, George, specifically about somehow Donald Trump's ability to control other people's planes.
Susan in Caldwell, Idaho, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Good morning, you two. Congressman, I hope that you will motivate your peers in Congress on the assumption, the rosy dream, that you do retake the House and the Senate in the coming elections, to start scoping out how to prevent this rogue president from issuing blanket pardons for all of his minions all throughout the departments that are, executing these obviously illegal schemes. And also, is there any movement to start dialing back the president's ability to declare an emergency in any situation so he can invoke emergency powers?
Yeah, he's invoked over 38 of them now. Thank you, Susan.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the second part I'm going to answer generally because I think it comes up a lot on the program is, elections have consequences. We don't have a majority in the House or the Senate. There are some things with Senate rules that they can block, which is why they did the reconciliation bill, because it required a simple majority. But, this is why we've got to focus on 2026 like never before to make sure we're getting things done. The first question, though, Tom, I forgot now. I was answering the second part of the question.
I'm sorry. I was distracted. Okay. I was pointing my attention elsewhere.
No, I should have wrote it down. My apologies, Susan,
right.
On what you asked.
Yeah, 15 minutes past the hour. We'll be back with more of your calls for Congressman Mark Pocan. It's Middays with Mark, hour 2 today, typically in the first hour. Congressman Mark Pocan, the Chair Emeritus of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, taking your calls for the hour. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Pocan.house.gov is both his website and his Blue Sky handle. Check it out. We'll be right back with your calls for Representative Mark Pocan of Wisconsin. And welcome back. Paul in Ambler, Pennsylvania. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman. I have a high confidence and a high probability that 2026 is going to be the year for the lower house Congress to be taken back by the Democrats. And since that's the case, I'd like to see us get something done in as dramatic a flood the zone fashion as the Republicans. And what I'd like to know is this something that you can help to facilitate? And it won't be that hard to do. Top 10 things that can be done in the first 100 hours. Your colleagues have already written a number of bills, and they already have a lot of co-sponsors. For example, Pramila Jayapal has to lower the Medicare age to 60. She has over 100 people that have signed on for that, including my congresswoman. Congressman Larson from Connecticut has been perennially introducing comprehensive reform of Social Security, which I'm sure you're aware of most of the details of that, and he has dozens upon dozens of people that are signed on to vote that through. And there could be 8 other things, including, a minimum wage of $30 an hour, rent control, and I'm sure somebody somewhere has introduced a bill and got a lot of people already lined up to co-sponsor it. Would you be willing to help organize a 100-hour, first 100 hours of 2026, top 10 things to get done so that you're doing something for the people of America? We don't need a revenge tour.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump
Let's
should go
get
to
the
jail.
answer to the question, Paul. You've been going on for a while here. Congressman?
Yeah, Paul. So we always do that. The HR 1 through 10 is a priority list of bills. That's how the House Democrats have traditionally operated, and we're already talking about that. We've had a bunch of meetings the last few months about that for the next session. However, don't forget, if we win the House and we don't have the Senate or the White House, those bills don't become law. Especially in the Senate, they still have a 60-vote filibuster rule unless you do reconciliation or it's fiscal in nature. So, that's a barrier. And then Donald Trump is still president. But what we can do is block legislative things. We can do oversight over the president. We can call him and his administration in for illegal and other acts that they're doing. And that is crucial. But it just puts a big giant gold star on that election day in November of next year, because it's so important. And right now, watching what the Republicans are doing on redistricting is trying to essentially change the rules and steal seats because they know how bad off they're going to be because of that big ugly law. So let's focus on that right now. But yes, we always have a top 10. Yes, we can try to get things through the House, but we need the Senate and the president to actually make them law. Let's not forget that.
I just have 20 seconds here. Do you expect Wisconsin to redistrict?
No, our Supreme Court did not take up the most recent filing. There's a new filing put in for 2028, but I think it needs to go to the local court level first, and that timing won't allow 2026 to happen.
So, but it's fairly heavily gerrymandered in favor of Republicans right now, isn't it?
Yeah, we have 2 congressional seats out of 8, and we're a purple about as 50-50 state as you can get. So
that's crazy.
It's really about 2 seats difference just
that's
in our
crazy.
state alone.
Okay, thank you, Congressman. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour, taking your calls. We'll be back with more of your calls for him in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out.
So a lot of people are wondering, why is it in America that we can't have nice things? Why don't we have, the same things every other democracy has? Every other democracy in the world has a national health care system of some form, and everybody is covered. We don't. We've got 27 million uninsured people and over 100 million underinsured people. Why is that? Why is it that every other country in the world offers college education very inexpensively, if not for free, and for here you go to debt? Why is it that we've got our public schools crumbling and other countries are doing well? Why is it that we've got Medicare being taken apart by this Medicare Advantage scam and nobody will do anything about it? Well, it turns out the reason why it boils down to one thing, one Supreme Court decision, Citizens United, legalizing the bribery of our politicians. There's a whole rant about this over at HartmannReport.com. I think you're going to find it very, very useful. Check it out.
There's Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls. Ron in Hamilton Field, California, you are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Well, thank you. Sir, I have a question on the military and the homeless. I go back to the 1980s supporting public events for awareness of the homeless. At that time, 50% on the average of the homeless were veterans. In 2025, the same average of 50% are homeless. What happened to the commander-in-chief to take care of his military? Where is the president's awareness of the real problem? What will he do now in D.C. to make sure that those veterans are given the care and support they should have had for the last decades?
Yeah, and if
Where
those
are we with that?
if those statistics are right, Congressman, I think veterans only make up around 6 or 8% of the population. It's a fairly small number. If half of the homeless are that's pretty mind-boggling. I can't verify that, but your thoughts?
No, it is a very high percent, and there are organizations in my area that just focus on homeless vets, and nationally as well. Of course, Donald Trump's going to do nothing like he normally does. He doesn't do things that fix things for people. In fact, this type of things he's done to the VA already have had all sorts of cuts by firing so many people. People, make appointments at VA hospitals, etc., all becoming more difficult for people because of the firings. And in this area, Donald Trump, they keep taking rescission of funds, and we think they're going to impound funds at the end of the fiscal year. Again, another way for him to steal funds that Congress approved. I think you're going to see even more hurt happen to the VA, the Veterans Administration. So, Ron, you're completely right. President's a complete hypocrite on this, but I don't think that's going to shock you. And I don't think it's the first time he's been a hypocrite on an issue.
David in Columbus, Ohio, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Congressman. I have an issue. I think Democrats want to do something. That is, the average Democrat out there wants to do something, but they're not connected to what's happening. We need, or you need to do a system where you show what different legislators are proposing, and you don't have to show every single bill, but, get a website that shows how you're different than the Republicans. For example, the Arms to Israel bill resolution introduced by Bernie Sanders, only 24 senators supported that. And if everybody knew that, those senators that didn't support it would probably start supporting it. And I think this is true for a lot of bills. And when I get messages from Democrats that want to get reelected or elected, they never mention foreign policy. They never mention what they voted for. They never mention anything. They never mention what they're going to vote for. So, I'm just shooting in the dark here. I would like to see support for people that vote and propose things that I agree with, whether it's health care, whether it's clean energy, whether it's everything. These things wouldn't be complicated, and that would show definitely how the Democrats are different and how the Democrats are proposing these things and they're getting cut down by the Republicans.
Yeah, David, your email must not look like my email box, because I get lots of these from a lot of the groups that are out there. I think the best thing I would recommend is if there's a certain issues that you care about a lot, find the groups advocating for those issues and get the updates from them, because, individual members will put that out on their social media, what they're doing. But, also, I'm just going to be real blunt. We're not in the majority. Those bills aren't going to become law. It's good to build support for them and to show the contrast like you're talking about. But the advocacy groups really are doing the best job. And every week, I think every member gets what I get, a list of who's contacted us about what. And I can tell there are a lot of campaigns going around about various legislation that it does differentiate us from the Republicans. I just think find the groups that you think are advocating for what you care about the most, and I think you'll get a lot of that in your inbox.
Congressman, we just have about 40 seconds here. Before the break, the Treasury Department just announced that the federal deficit or debt just hit $37 trillion. This was a very successful issue for Republicans for a lot of years. Are Democrats going to pick up that mantle?
I think a big part of it we have been talking about with the big ugly law that added at least $4 trillion additional. And I think I'm going to forget the number off the top of my head, but it's something like 12 or 15 trillion of that has come out of the last couple of Republican presidents alone of that national debt. So that is something we're talking about. But I think tying it to that, it's so a tax break goes to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. I think that helps reinforce it even more.
Yeah. If you add up the tax breaks from Reagan, Bush, and Trump, it equals more than $37 trillion. Yeah. It's mind-boggling. Thank you. Yeah. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour. It's Middays with Mark. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan right after this break. Stay with us.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
You will find his website at pocan.house.gov, P-O-C-A-N. You can also, that's also his Blue Sky handle. Stick around. Today's book in our book club is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back, by this guy, Thom Hartmann. This is from chapter 1, or from the introduction, actually. In 2016, 6% of Americans who were eligible to vote nominated Donald Trump as the GOP's presidential candidate. It was 8% for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. Trump went on to be elected president by 26% of eligible voters. The modern American oligarchs have largely stayed in power using three simple elements: explicit and overt racism, massive disinformation campaigns, and voter suppression. No ideas, no push for better schools, hospitals, airports, roads, or bridges, or reform of our health, energy, or financial systems. No promise of more and better jobs. None of these staples of past presidential campaigns can be found in pretty much any Republican advertising today. Instead, the public Republican message is all about race, or the subset of race, religion. Muslim stands in for brown Arab in GOP speak, and immigration, aka brown people from south of our border, and socialism. Meanwhile, Republican secretaries of state across the nation are vigorously purging voters from the rolls. Over 17 million, more than 10% of America's active voters, in just the 2016-2018 period, according to NBC News. After the, after the 5 Republican appointees on the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, 14 GOP-controlled states moved within a year, some within days, to restrict access to the vote, particularly for communities of color, students, and retired people. In North Carolina, for example, 158 polling places were permanently closed in the 40 counties with the most African-American voters just before the 2016 election, leading to a 16% decline in African-American early voting in that state. An MIT study found that nationwide, Hispanic voters wait 150% longer in line than white voters, and black voters can expect to wait 200% longer in line to vote. In Indiana, then Governor Mike Pence's new rigorous voter ID law caused an 11.5% drop in African-American voting. Students are suing for their right to vote, and retired people who no longer drive but care passionately about their Social Security and Medicare are being turned away at the polls by the hundreds of thousands because their driver's licenses have expired. The obvious failure of 40-plus years of Reaganomics and GOP policies to maintain a functional middle class in America has been a problem for the modern GOP. In 1974, for example, the GOP had outright control of only 7 states. The message, elect us and we'll help the rich people, just didn't generally resonate with American voters. It's the reason why, outside of the fluke elections of 46 and 52, Democrats controlled the House of Representatives outright for 3 generations, from 1933 to 1996, and controlled the Senate for most of that time. Desperate to win the presidency for the GOP in 1968, Richard Nixon went so far as to commit treason by torpedoing a peace deal with President Lyndon Johnson that President Lyndon Johnson had worked out with the North and South Vietnamese. According to Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, then president of Iran, Ronald Reagan did the same thing by cutting a deal with Iran whereby they would hold on to the U.S. embassy hostages until after the 1980 presidential election, torpedoing Jimmy Carter's chances of re-election. But in 2000, the GOP changed tactics. After Reagan was almost busted for his part in Iran-Contra, he testified that he had forgotten about details of the program more than 80 times. His growing Alzheimer's spared him an indictment. They realized that getting busted for treason wasn't worth the risk. They needed a plan B, and it was deliciously simple. If most voters don't like what you're selling, then just don't let them vote. Paul Weyrich promoted this idea back in 1980 when he was campaigning for Reagan after co-founding the Heritage Foundation. And indeed, many Republican luminaries, such as William Rehnquist, who went from serving the GOP by standing in polling places and intimidating Hispanic and Native American voters in the 1960s, to becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, rose up through the ranks by participating in Republican-run voter intimidation schemes.
voter suppression became the foundational go-to tactic for the GOP in 2000. Although the GOP attacked Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore with smear and innuendo, ridiculing him for helping write the legislation that created the modern internet, for example, the main thing that got George W. Bush into the White House was voter suppression. His brother, Florida Governor Jeb Bush, and Bush's Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, threw somewhere between 20,000 and 90,000 African-American voters off the rolls. They were able to get the vote close enough. The 5 Republican appointees to the Supreme Court functionally awarded Bush the presidency. The BBC covered this in 2001 in 2 major investigative reports that were seen all over the world, except on any American media. By 2016, the Republican Party had fine-tuned its voter suppression and intimidation systems to the point that they ran like well-oiled machines in nearly 30 states. Between the 2012 and 2016 presidential elections, for example, Ohio had purged more than 2 million voters from its rolls, the vast majority, more than 2 to 1, in heavily African-American and Hispanic counties. The 5 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court ruled in 2017 that they could keep it up. And other states have since adopted their new tactic of caging voters. The book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, by me. Share the Thom Hartmann Program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com. So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto and tariffs and all this other stuff, Trump is threatening to crash our economy. And he doesn't seem to be particularly worried about that. Why would that be? Well, first off, economic disasters are great excuses to cut taxes. Both Reagan and George W. Bush used recessions as their excuse to stimulate the economy by cutting trillions from the taxes of billionaires. Secondly, economic crises increase the tolerance for strongman governments. Hitler rode to power in Europe based on the Great Depression. And third, billionaires make a fortune when there's a market crash, because they can buy all the stock that average people are trying to unload from their 401ks to pay the damn rent. There's a whole article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Crashing the Economy, Trump's Blueprint for Power and Profit. Check it out. Welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan is with us for the hour, taking your calls. It's Middays with Mark, hour 2. Patrick in Chicago, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Tom and Mark. Thanks again for doing this. Really appreciate it, and really appreciate hearing the Democratic governors coming out and talking about redistricting. But I think you guys should keep the pedal on the metal and keep going. I think you, AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, and the rest of the Progressive Caucus should take over the Democratic Party before the Republicans finish destroying the country. Current party leaders are just too slow, boring, unwilling to attack. We have wimps when we need warriors. We can't win by playing reactionary defense and respecting decorum when our democracy is on life support. We need to see the Progressive Caucus get aggressive, declare leadership over the party outright with a press conference, and announce a super PAC for immediate donations, forcibly put progressives in key committee seats, kill the seniority rule, and fight with the same ruthlessness Republicans use, but for democracy. We have the people, we have the votes, we have the urgency. The only question is the Progressive Caucus ready to take power before it's too late? Thanks.
Tell them what you really think, Patrick.
Yeah, that was passion, Patrick. I like it.
That was great.
So in many ways, that's what the Progressive Caucus is doing. You know, over the summer, 50 of us are going into Republican districts to talk about the big ugly law and tariffs and other things that they're doing, taking it right to them. You know, this is something that rarely happened previously, and I'm really proud of the caucus all stepping up to do that. Also, don't forget, it's Bernie Sanders and AOC who have been having the biggest crowds going around the country. So in many ways, you know, we know people agree with the issues that the Progressive Caucus advocates for. We already are leading the party. I think the difficulty sometimes for the current leadership is that we also have some members in swing districts that, you know, are usually very afraid of lots of things because they win by small margins and they have to kind of balance everyone's needs. But where the actual movement is, where you're seeing activity, that is coming from progressives, and I think that's exactly what you want. And we just need to keep that up. There's no putting the foot off the gas pedal at this point.
Yeah, I think the New York mayoral race is really an indicator of where this country is at. America wants FDR and LBJ back. They want aggressive progressives who actually get stuff done, take names and kick ass. Kevin in North Miami, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Thank you both for your time, and I do not mean for this call to be sarcastic. I would hope that you could pass this question on to the Republicans in Congress and ultimately to Donald Trump. The first assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life was, I believe, in a red state. The second assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life was also in a red state here in Florida. Mar-a-Lago is in Palm Beach County, and the second assassination attempt also happened in Palm Beach County. Can Trump please be persuaded to call out the National Guard and the military to help patrol Palm Beach County to make Palm Beach County a more safer place to live in Trump's hometown county?
Well, not to mention there's a major felon who lives there who may well be involved in crimes against children. Congressman?
Yeah, this is an argument that I'm hearing more of, Kevin. People are saying, look, don't just go into cities where there may be people of color leading them, or this is your it was so easy for him to do DC because of the unique relationship with DC and the federal government. We'll see if he's going to be able to try to continue to do this. But again, I think he's doing it because he wants to reinforce there are so many criminals who've been let in here illegally, and he's the one taking care of it. And we know none of the numbers of people that he's deporting are matching up to what he said. He's just trying to keep that issue alive because it's his number one polling issue. And he'd rather we not talk about the fact that people are about to lose 15 million people losing health care, over 2 million people losing food assistance, people are going to be paying more, the bottom 40 percentile paying for those tax cuts for the wealthiest. He doesn't really want to have the details. That's why if you're in a Republican district, the odds are your member spends more time in their basement than above ground meeting with constituents in town halls. And that's why many of us in the Progressive Caucus have been taking it right to them to make that point, because people are smarter than the Republicans think they are. If you really pass something that good, you'd get on the rooftop and scream about it. Instead, they're hiding in their basement, and we're the ones going out talking about it. I think that speaks volumes.
David in Sarasota, Florida. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hi, guys. Thanks for what you guys do. I was wondering, they say that the tax cuts are permanent. If we won both the House and the Senate back in the midterms or whatever, could we repeal the permanent tax cuts?
Yes, although it would take the president signing it into law, so we're also going to have a president. But yes, I think it just says more that the first time they did the tax cuts, corporate tax cuts became permanent because that was Donald Trump's priority. This time, tax cuts for the wealthy became permanent, and the little crumbs they gave working people, the no tax on tips, and again, there's a lot of asterisks after each of these, the no tax on your auto loan interest, no tax on overtime, and a tax break for seniors. All of those together add up to about 5% of this massive bill. And those are all not permanent. Those go away. So again, that bill tells you everything you need to know about the modern Republican Party and Donald Trump. And that's why they want to do everything but talk about it.
Tom in Media, Pennsylvania. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. My concern is about the Medicaid changes. And I think we need to learn from the Medicare unwinding program. They said millions of qualified people would lose their Medicaid. And initially that was true. But once everybody got their act together, there's actually more people on Medicaid now than there were before COVID, once that was fixed. My question is, this Congressional Budget Office says 10 million people that are qualified will lose their Medicaid. They don't anticipate intensive outreach, I don't believe, on the federal, state, and local levels. I think if we have intensive outreach, provide them the volunteer opportunities throughout the counties, simplify the forms, and really work to find out where people are, that there's going to be far, far more than 10 million American citizens who are qualified losing their thing. And my question is, what are the Democrats, and the Republicans doing right now to increase this outreach and learn from the mistakes of the unwinding, so we have far more than 10 million people losing Medicaid, as the Congressional Budget Office claims.
Sure. Well, first, one of the devious things the Republicans did is they make those cuts happen after the next election because they knew the impact they'd have. So they purposely did it after the election. So there's going to be a little time before that happens. But we do know Arkansas did many of these changes. And what we know from Arkansas, of the people that were kicked off of some of these benefits, 70% qualified. It was just so cumbersome to actually qualify for them that they couldn't get access. So you're right. There's some ways that we can try to get that word out once this happens. But better yet, let's just fix the issue, because the problem is they took away the dollars. So even if then we get some more people back on, the dollars for those programs are still gone, and that's going to put other strain on Medicaid. And Tom, I want to, every time we talk about Medicaid, we got to say they cut $500 million from Medicare. They said they never would touch Medicare, and they took away a year of the life of the Social Security Trust Fund because of all those tax cuts in that big ugly law. So in addition to firing 7,000 people who work for Social Security, so they have cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and we need to keep repeating that.
Tracy in Fayetteville, Georgia, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hello, Congressman. I have a question and a concern. My question is, and my concern is, when the Democrats take over the House and hopefully the Senate, that Trump will still not do what he's supposed to do. My concern is that he's going to continue just like he did not do what the Supreme Court and the judges have done. Secondly, when we do get the House back and when we get a Democratic president, why will they not remove the people that Trump have appointed? When that was my problem with Biden. I loved Biden, but he did not remove people that Trump had appointed, and that's why Trump's plan went through so smoothly.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I totally agree with that second point, because there's a few people that didn't get removed, like the Postmaster General, who was awful, because a Postal Board of Governors has that authority. And yes, the president appoints those folks, but there are certain timelines and things like that in place. But we can absolutely do a lot with a Democratic majority in the House and Senate, or either house for that matter, because one, you are actually a goalie to blocking any legislation, most important thing. But secondly, we do oversight. We can call in administration officials and question their illegal acts. And if the president keeps doing it, we can subpoena people, and we have levers. Once you're in the majority, you can put things for a public vote and get that additional public pressure on members of Congress. But when you're in the minority, we can't schedule a bill. One of the few vehicles you have is a discharge petition, not that often used. You need 218 people to sign something to say you want to force a vote. And even when we've had that done, Republicans have figured out a way to make their Republican members who signed it back down. The gold standard is you flip the majority in the House and the Senate, and then we get a new president. And then we've got a lot of fixing to do. But more importantly, let's learn from this. We are the only industrialized nation that doesn't have universal health care. We really want to deliver something for the people. You deliver on something like that. Let's pick a few of those issues. And as the people, let's really force them on the politicians and on our elected officials.
Yeah, free college, universal health care, and get dark money out of politics, I think is the deadly
HR
triad.
The first dumb bill we always do is cleaning that up, getting rid of Citizens United. Absolutely.
There you go. Congressman Mark Pocan with us for the hour. Middays with Mark. We'll be back with more of your calls for Representative Pocan in just a moment, 46 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Pocan.house.gov is both his website and also his handle over on Blue Sky. Stick around. And welcome back. Ed in Kingston, Michigan. You are on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, man. A couple of weeks ago, I spoke with the good congressman about Vice News and the programs that they've had about all the gangs that exist in the country. And the Marines and all these guys seem to be going after the yard workers rather than the actual gangs that exist. On August 5, they had all-day programs on Vice News, on my Dish network, describing all the different gangs that exist nationwide. And that's my question. So thank you very much and have a good day. Bye.
I don't know if I caught the question, but I'll try to make a comment on it. This is exactly what we're finding out. Donald Trump promised that there were all these criminals that were in the United States and he was going to deport them. Very quickly realizing, honestly, the numbers he put out there are complete fabrications. So now he's got to prove there's crime, and he's proving it by putting National Guard in places like LA and in DC. And in that's his way of trying to scare people to continue to support him. As we had mentioned earlier, something that, dictators and authoritarians around the world do. So we just can't fall for it, and the good news is more people are understanding that this is not true what he's saying about immigration. We had a town meeting last night with a community group about ICE and just the fear that's out there. I mean, what Donald Trump is doing is the worst in human nature, but he's doing it for political reasons and self-serving political reasons. And we have to make sure people really understand that he's nothing more than a bald-faced liar.
Well said. Howard in Seattle, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Just thank you very much. Earlier this year, DOJ fired thousands of government workers. And the firings, I don't think, showed up in the monthly statistics. And so earlier this month, they put a correction in to reflect all of the firings that happened. And then the job report shifted. And Donald Trump said something like, it's making me look bad. And he fired the person who was in charge, the woman who was in charge of statistics. He's now going to put his person in place. That person's going to cook the books. There's no, I'm clear that he's going to lie about it. I want to know what can be done to continue to be able to rely on government statistics to be able to tell the truth rather than have them cooked.
Right. Well, any good king or whatever Donald Trump's trying to be, says something and we're all supposed to believe it, right? That's the new way you have facts. And he's putting in people like the new person in charge of those statistics coming from the Heritage Foundation. He's supposedly an economist, but everything that I've heard about him, even Tom from conservative groups has said he's one of the most air-ridden economists that they've ever dealt with.
He's a quack.
Yeah, and Donald Trump doesn't care because he's going to tell you what he's going to tell you regardless. That's his style, but there's a real danger to what he's doing, and it can affect lots of other parts of the economy. The other thing, though, is, on those stats, I mean, just for what it's worth, a lot of this is still mailed in data from individual employers and stuff. Honestly, there should be an update to that platform. So, when you have these corrections, Donald Trump was claiming they're trying to make him look bad. You have corrections because people don't send things in by the due dates. And because it's mailed in and he's done so much to damage the Postal Service that, now that's why you have the alteration of numbers. So just so people understand why we have that often, it's nothing more than, by the way the numbers are collected, that's what makes you have to have a revision often of job statistics.
Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. When Ronald Reagan took over America in 1981, we handed him a brand gleaming new country. Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, Jack Kennedy, they had built America. We had brand new schools, brand new hospitals, brand new interstate highway systems, brand new airports, infrastructure. We were the envy of the world. And then Republicans came along and they said, well, you just cut the top tax rate from 74% down to 27% and everything will trickle down. Instead, what do we get? Billionaire. They said, hey, just deregulate guns and an armed society is a polite society. Instead, we've got more school shootings than anywhere in the world. They said, just kill off civics and history classes in our schools and liberate our young people to focus on science and math. And now we've got people who don't know how our government works. I mean, it just goes on from there. There's a whole rant about it over at HartmannReport.com titled FDR Saved America, Then the GOP Ripped Us Apart. Check it out. Welcome back. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. Bill in Clifton, New Jersey. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Yeah, hi. I had just heard that they've finally got, I guess, a finger on the number for the tariffs that are being brought in, and they say it's about $28 billion a month, which is about a third of $1 trillion a year. People should be made aware that's their money. That's where the money went, and the money should be going into Medicare and Medicaid for all the shortfalls that are going to come up. And just one other thing. Do you think that Trump is going to invade New York with Eric Adams? He's supporting.
Yeah, second one, I'm not sure. Eric Adams, I'm sure, will do whatever to try to increase his numbers in the polls. They're pretty dismal right now, but I don't have an answer. On the first one, tariffs, we really do need to get this message across. There is a lag from when tariffs are implemented and we feel them as consumers, because some of it, people overbought when they knew tariffs were coming, so that way they could avoid tariffs having to be passed on to consumers. Then you had the uncertainty. I just talked to an employer yesterday, did a tour. They said uncertainty is the thing that's killing them the most. But we know that it's the importer who pays the tariff, but it gets passed on to consumers. So we really pay the tariff at the end of the day. Now, you can use targeted tariffs well, and we have in this nation's history, and we need to again. But Donald Trump is not doing that. He's just throwing them out. He couldn't get the 90 deals in 90 days, so he sent out letters. It's chaotic, and it's causing a lot of problems. But the real impact of those is going to be happening down the road. So maybe around Christmas time, maybe early next year. So we need to continue to stress that. Who pays tariffs? Consumers pay tariffs. And that way we can make sure that people know when their cost of living is going up, why it's going up.
Matthew in Tomah, Wisconsin. You're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, Congressman Pocan. This is Matt. I'm calling. I was a veteran in the Navy. I got out in 2004, went to work for the state of Wisconsin as a correctional officer. I did that because I had a new family. I was just getting started. I started working for the state of Wisconsin for a number of years. In 2010, Scott Walker passed Act 10, and they threw our union away. We all of a sudden had no more pay increases, increased payments to our retirement, increased payments to our health care. We had workplace abuses from management. We were working 16 hours a day every single day that we showed up to work. And I finally got sick of it and realized that the only way I'm going to make something of myself was to do it myself. So I became a nurse. And then I work now at the VA in Tomah as a nurse. Last week, Trump's appointee tossed out our union contract. Yep. This is deja vu. They did the exact same thing that Scott Walker did, and they kept the policemen on, they kept the firefighters on, and they tossed everybody else out. And I know what's going to happen. There's going to be workplace abuse from management, and we're going to be working many, many more hours that are no longer safe, and veterans are not going to get the care that they need.
Just about out of time here, Matthew. The question?
My question is, you've seen it before. Where does this go from here?
Yeah, Matt, so I'll tell you, you're right. Scott Walker was the canary in the cave for Republicans. This is exactly what's in Project 2025. They're doing it with you now. I think the best thing I can say, the positive thing, is don't forget, Scott Walker did all this to run for president. Who was the first person to drop out of the Republican primary that cycle running for president? Scott Walker. It's not a political winner. They once again will try these sort of issues, but the American people don't support him. And, if we can flip the House and the Senate, there is no question we're going to give workers their voice back through unions, because it's imperative we do.
There you go. Congressman, we just have 35 seconds. Thoughts on, the coming next 2 weeks, how we can best engage in activism and what we should be looking for and reacting to?
Yeah, you're a member of Congress. The House or the Senate is home until after Labor Day. This is a great time to try to connect with them. If they're not holding town halls, make wherever they go become a town hall. Have people come, wait outside for them. Get in their face and call the media and let them know you're going to do that, because it is the 101 of being a member of Congress is listening to your constituents and representing their values in Washington. If they're not doing that, make them uncomfortable, and you've got 2.5 weeks to do it, because they're going to be in your backyard.
Bernie used to recommend that people just rent a room in the local high school gym and invite them, and if they don't show up, just do it anyway.
People are doing that like crazy in Wisconsin. I've seen that across the state right now.
That is great. And I know you've been doing, you kind of pioneered this stuff. So Congressman Mark Pocan, thank you so much for being with us. You're doing God's work out there. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, thanks as always. I appreciate you and your listeners.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. I'll be back on the other side of the break with Malcolm Nance. What do spies think about what Trump is up to with Putin?
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Today's book in our book club is The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back, by this guy, Thom Hartmann. This is from chapter 1, or from the introduction, actually. In 2016, 6% of Americans who were eligible to vote nominated Donald Trump as the GOP's presidential candidate. It was 8% for Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. Trump went on to be elected president by 26% of eligible voters. The modern American oligarchs have largely stayed in power using 3 simple elements: explicit and overt racism, massive disinformation campaigns, and voter suppression. No ideas, no push for better schools, hospitals, airports, roads, or bridges, or reform of our health, energy, or financial systems. No promise of more and better jobs. None of these staples of past presidential campaigns can be found in pretty much any Republican advertising today. Instead, the public Republican message is all about race, or the subset of race, religion. Muslim stands in for brown Arab in GOP speak, and immigration, a.k.a. brown people from south of our border, and socialism. Meanwhile, Republican secretaries of state across the nation are vigorously purging voters from the rolls. Over 17 million, more than 10% of America's active voters, in just the 2016-2018 period, according to NBC News. After the, after the 5 Republican appointees on the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, 14 GOP-controlled states moved within a year, some within days, to restrict access to the vote, particularly for communities of color, students, and retired people. In North Carolina, for example, 158 polling places were permanently closed in the 40 counties with the most African-American voters just before the 2016 election, leading to a 16% decline in African-American early voting in that state. An MIT study found that nationwide, Hispanic voters wait 150% longer in line than white voters, and black voters can expect to wait 200% longer in line to vote. In Indiana, then Governor Mike Pence's new rigorous voter ID law caused an 11.5% drop in African-American voting. Students are suing for their right to vote, and retired people who no longer drive but care passionately about their Social Security and Medicare are being turned away at the polls by the hundreds of thousands because their driver's licenses have expired. The obvious failure of 40-plus years of Reaganomics and GOP policies to maintain a functional middle class in America has been a problem for the modern GOP. In 1974, for example, the GOP had outright control of only 7 states. The message, elect us and we'll help the rich people, just didn't generally resonate with American voters. It's the reason why, outside of the fluke elections of 46 and 52, Democrats controlled the House of Representatives outright for 3 generations, from 1933 to 1996, and controlled the Senate for most of that time. Desperate to win the presidency for the GOP in 1968, Richard Nixon went so far as to commit treason by torpedoing a peace deal with President Lyndon Johnson that President Lyndon Johnson had worked out with the North and South Vietnamese. According to Abul Hassan Bani Sadr, then president of Iran, Ronald Reagan did the same thing by cutting a deal with Iran whereby they would hold on to the U.S. embassy hostages until after the 1980 presidential election, torpedoing Jimmy Carter's chances of re-election. But in 2000, the GOP changed tactics. After Reagan was almost busted for his part in Iran-Contra, he testified that he had forgotten about details of the program more than 80 times. His growing Alzheimer's spared him an indictment. They realized that getting busted for treason wasn't worth the risk. They needed a plan B, and it was deliciously simple. If most voters don't like what you're selling, then just don't let them vote. Paul Weyrich promoted this idea back in 1980 when he was campaigning for Reagan after co-founding the Heritage Foundation. And indeed, many Republican luminaries, such as William Rehnquist, who went from serving the GOP by standing in polling places and intimidating Hispanic and Native American voters in the 1960s, to becoming Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, rose up through the ranks by participating in Republican-run voter intimidation schemes. Voter suppression became the foundational go-to tactic for the GOP in 2000. Although the GOP attacked Democratic presidential nominee Al Gore with smear and innuendo, ridiculing him for helping write the legislation that created the modern internet, for example, the main thing that got George W. Bush into the White House was voter suppression. His brother, Florida Governor Jeb Bush, and Bush's Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, threw somewhere between 20,000 and 90,000 African-American voters off the rolls. They were able to get the vote close enough that 5 Republican appointees to the Supreme Court functionally awarded Bush the presidency. The BBC covered this in 2001 in 2 major investigative reports that were seen all over the world, except on any American media. By 2016, the Republican Party had fine-tuned its voter suppression and intimidation systems to the point that they ran like well-oiled machines in nearly 30 states. Between the 2012 and 2016 presidential elections, for example, Ohio had purged more than 2 million voters from its rolls, the vast majority, more than 2 to 1, in heavily African-American and Hispanic counties. The 5 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court ruled in 2017 that they could keep it up. And other states have since adopted their new tactic of caging voters. The book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, by me.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the 3rd hour of our program. On the line with us, a U.S. intelligence expert, author of several books, including They Want to Kill Americans and The Plot to Destroy Democracy, Malcolm Nance. He's got one of the Substack newsletters that is an absolute must-read. You have to subscribe to this. It's completely free. Malcolm Nance, MALCOLMNANCE.substack.com. MalcolmNance.org, of course, is his website, and it's Malcolm Nance over on Blue Sky as well. Malcolm, welcome back to the program. It's been a while since we've talked in this venue. Thank you for having me on your podcast last week. And I'm curious your thoughts on the 2 big issues that I want to get into is, number one, Trump going to Alaska with Putin, and then the second, D.C. Let's start with Trump and Putin. I just heard that apparently just minutes ago, this is from at the top of the New York Times now, that Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, and several other, Meloni from Italy, several other European leaders who have a good relationship with Trump, who are willing to stroke his ego and keep him happy, got on the phone with him, got on a video call with him along with Zelensky, and kind of prepped him for the meeting with Putin. What say you about all this?
Well, I find it fascinating since Donald Trump had given a series of what he thought were ultimatums to Russia that started earlier this year. First, he cut ties, military and defense ties with Ukraine, then berated President Zelensky in the Oval Office. And then when he was being ignored by Vladimir Putin, he gave them a 2-week window, then a 1-week window, then a 50-day window, which he cut down to a 12-day window, and then announced that he was having an open summit with Vladimir Putin. As you know, or you may or may not know, I was in the Ukrainian army for the better part of a year.
I do
as
know.
an international
I
legionnaire. And I have to tell you, from the perspective of someone who has fought from the ground against the Russians, I see Donald Trump as being completely focused on one thing and one thing only. You and I both have spoken about this at length, and that's money. He is not particularly interested in the rise of democracy or the fall of democracy in Ukraine. He is not particularly interested in anything with regards to Vladimir Putin, other than the fact that he has been trying to get money out of Russia in the hundreds of billions of dollars for decades, including his Trump Tower Moscow plan, which rumors are may be back on the table. Yeah. So Trump seeming to think that he's going to get Putin to sit down with him and cut this big deal that will eventually get him the Nobel Prize is living in a fantasy world. This is a KGB officer who manipulates people for breakfast. And Donald Trump just wants access to that oligarch, sweet oligarch money from Russia.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed that these European leaders got together and said, Trump's people are not going to inform him, and Trump is an idiot. He doesn't do prep. So, we've got to put some things in his head. I mean, that was pretty good.
Sure. I think it was a great idea. I mean, because Trump's worldview this last few months has been coming from Steve Witkoff, who is a multi-billionaire real estate developer, his personal representative, who has been meeting 5 times with Vladimir Putin. There are leaders throughout history that have never met with Putin 5 times. Yeah. And Witkoff apparently has bought into the entire worldview of Russia because he never takes an American Russian interpreter. He only uses Putin's Russian interpreter. And that's where things get confused. And this talk that Ukraine would be willing to surrender 20% of its land in exchange for peace is one of those things that the European leaders and Zelensky needed to disabuse Trump of right off the bat.
Yeah, and what's so amazing is Putin's actually fluent in English. I mean, it's incredible. So tell me about your thoughts on Trump's naked violation of the Posse Comitatus Act in D.C. This morning I heard a conversation, I believe it was on Joe Scarborough's show, where they were talking about how the National Guard yesterday arrested 48 people. And there was, they had this long conversation about it and how much crime there was and all this stuff. And nobody mentioned that it's a 2-year felony to use the military to arrest people. I mean, literally nobody mentioned it. What the hell is going on here, Malcolm?
Well, this is, I'm almost sorry that you brought this question up, because this is where I get angry. I think that certainly on our side, the Never Trump side, the Democratic side, the progressive side, the centrist conservative side, why we are not outraged that an American city is having U.S. citizens arrested by soldiers. No true authority to do what they're doing.
Or training.
I saw video or training. Look, soldiers don't want to do this. And God forbid I go down there. I'll go down with a megaphone and I'll start reading them the Uniform Code of Military Justice, to where this is something people don't seem to understand. These officers can be held individually liable for what they're doing. There was a video yesterday of a group of police HSI DEA, FBI, who were walking down in the Southeast, who harassed an American citizen who was smoking a cigarette on his front porch, and then informed him that you cannot drink in public or smoke in public in Washington, D.C. And the way that he characterized it was, quote unquote, Trump is tired of seeing these crimes. That is how they're being briefed. We need to, why there hasn't a massive protest, see, that's the dog who's barking for freedom and democracy back there. Why we have not gotten to the point where we need to go down and recalibrate the law enforcement as to what they can and cannot do is beyond me.
Well, let me read you the entirety of the Posse Comitatus Act. The entire law is one sentence long. It says, whoever, except in cases and under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress, whoever willfully uses any part of the Army or the Air Force as a posse comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. Now, it doesn't say the president. It doesn't say, you know, the way I'm reading this, and you said this just a second ago, and it just hadn't occurred to me until I heard you say it, that the officers who are directing these soldiers could be held responsible. They could be facing 2 years in prison for violations of the Posse Comitatus Act. Do you read it the same way? I mean, you're far more familiar also with the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Does it speak to this?
Yes, it's literal. It's literal, but we're looking at an administration that does not believe in the literal word of the Constitution of the United States and does not obey laws. And I have to tell you something. These young soldiers who are in the National Guard, they're leaving their families and their friends. And to be quite honest, they and law enforcement need to be shamed into what they're doing. Let me point something out to you. My last book, which you mentioned a little earlier, was about right-wing extremist attacks, organizations, and murders in the United States during the Trump era. But the Oath Keepers, all right, the Oath Keeper militia group was literally formed on these words. They were to remind soldiers and law enforcement officers to remember their oath was not to participate in the arrest, patrolling, or occupying of America, under any president. And this group actually operates as a militia for Donald Trump. That group actually defined what they should not be doing. FBI is not a street patrol group going out arresting people on the U Street corridor in D.C. for throwing a sandwich. This is ludicrous. I'm sorry, but right now, the level of outrage I'm seeing is not adequate to the offense of what's being done here. An American city is being occupied and is being militarized on the direction of what could arguably only be a dictator or a mad king.
Yeah, Malcolm, we're talking with the great Malcolm Nance, the U.S. intelligence expert, former spy. They Want to Kill Americans is his last book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy. Prior to that, his Substack, malcolmnance.substack.com, is brilliant and free. You need to sign up for it. Malcolm, my take on this is that Trump is preparing for November of 2026, or maybe January of 2027, when the next Congress is sworn in, and that he is preparing to either rig the election or ignore the election or try to overturn the election, which he's already done once. And he knows that, like when Lukashenko did this in Belarus in 2020, I guess it was, when Putin, when Navalny was killed in 2021 and millions of people were out in the streets, that, the way that they responded was with the military. And when Yoon in South Korea failed to pre-position the military, failed to soften up the opposition, failed to get ready for his, statement of militarization or martial law in South Korea, he got kicked out. He lost. And Trump is not going to lose. I see this as all about next year's elections. What say you?
I think that's a factor, but I also think there's an entertainment factor that Trump has realized as in his first term, and now in this term, the run up to the elections in 2020. He understands that MAGA loves the display of military power. that they sit around to watch videos on or reels on YouTube of tactical teams maneuvering in war, or the TV show SEAL Team. They love what we call the bombs, guns, and helicopter rides element of the military. What they don't like is teamwork. They don't like diversity. They don't like inclusion. They don't like anything that makes the U.S. Armed Forces what it truly is, a constitutional body. This patrolling of the streets, like they did in Los Angeles, bringing the guys out on SWAT teams, FBI SWAT teams out on Bearcat armored trucks, and then following them up with horse patrols from Customs Border Patrol in Los Angeles in a 3-block area to make it look like that city was on fire. He is now carrying out this operation in Washington, D.C. on the basis of one thing.
So this is kind of a psyop.
It is, because it's a psyop that the precipitating event was the beating of one white guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Big balls.
The Doge guy, by a group of 15-year-olds. He was in an alley off the U Street corridor in a bar district, underage, in a place that no one should be. I lived in D.C. for decades, but this kid was out there. And now Donald Trump, because one white man was beaten, he is now occupying an American city.
There you go. Hang on just a second. We're going to get stepped on here.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Malcolm Nance. Check out his books, They Want to Kill Americans and The Plot to Destroy Democracy. Check out his Substack newsletter, malcolmnance.substack.com. Thank you, Malcolm.
My pleasure.
Come back soon, Malcolm. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Hey, anytime.
Okay.
And welcome back. Michael in Gainesville, Florida. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I was wondering if you have seen the movie Idiocracy before.
I have not. I've heard about it. I think I know what the storyline is, but no, I haven't watched it.
Well, it ties in with so much going on. For one thing, you were discussing earlier the different difficulties with the posse comitatus, and it reminds me of that movie. They basically lose the ability to do complex things and deal with big words. And although it's cultish, it also kind of ties in with tariffs, because they're like grades. They're there to kind of separate the middle class from its money and from its freedom of thought, kind of like in the 60s, which you have spoken of oftentimes. And here's where it ties in kind of weirdly with the Idiocracy movie, because I think elitists like Reagan and Trump probably also enjoy Idiocracy for the reasons liberals do, but kind of see it completely differently. They see it as a truth, and they want to prevent the masses, who they view as the middle ignorant masses, from over reproducing and completely cluttering the planet, and they have to dispel them like Reagan sought to do. Reagan, and the link between thought and money isn't clear in a lot of people's minds. I know that Reagan fought like heck when he was governor to ban universities from playing rock music at official university functions. And you think, well, what does that have to do with everything? And the fact that he was also the guy who sought to, as you've described, to completely gut the middle class. Well, that's power.
Yeah.
And
it's also a reflection of Steve Bannon's.
On the money, you focus on power if you're a bully.
Yeah, it's also an example of Steve Bannon's assertion that politics is downstream from culture, not the other way around, which is something I think the Republicans figured out in the 80s and the Democrats are still trying to figure out.
And power is the first thing you focus on, not the money.
Yeah, got it. Well said, Michael. Thank you very much. Morris in Inglewood, California. Hey, Morris, what's on your mind today?
What? Hey, Tom, check this out. I've been following this young lady. Her name is Whitney Webb, right? I know you know about her regarding the Epstein situation. Mm-hmm. I know we know about all the freaky stuff, but there's a lot of corruption with our congressman with this one. With the side, we got some wire transfers, big time money. We got a Mossad connection, right? Now, here's why I'm calling you. President Maduro from Venezuela, right? You know how Ms. Bondi talked about we got a $50 million bounty on his head, the same thing we did with Saddam Hussein? Well, he reversed it. Maduro is saying, I'm going to give you $50 million if you give me all the Epstein tapes and information. My question to you, Tom, you think somebody going to go out there and try to collect that money?
Well, it turns out it's a hox. He never said that.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's been debunked. But sorry to do that to you, Morris. But I think it would be, I mean, I don't have $50 million, but I suspect that I could offer $50 million for the Epstein tapes and never have to pay it, because if they have not been destroyed, they have certainly been put in a place where they're never going to see the light of day. I mean, at least as long as Donald Trump is president. Morris, it's always nice hearing from you. Thanks so much for the call. We'll be back with more of the news of the day. Well, actually, we'll be back with your calls on the other side of the break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So what do we call the really, really mind-bogglingly rich? At the founding of the Republic, they were referred to as speculators or moneyed interest or aristocrats. In the years leading up to the Civil War, we called them the cotton lords and the plantation aristocracy. In the late 19th century, they were the robber barons. In the 1930s, FDR called them the economic royalists. But since the Reagan Revolution, we've just called them billionaires. And now, some of them want to call themselves tech bros. Like, that's kind of a good thing, like tech is positive and bros, like Mark Zuckerberg saying we need more masculine energy in American business culture. So we need a new phrase. I would like to suggest the morbidly rich. Morbidly suggests unhealthy. And the vast riches that some of these people have is unhealthy to our democracy, particularly since 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court said that morbidly rich people can buy politicians. And it's unhealthy for them, too. So morbidly rich. There's an op-ed over at HartmannReport.com all about it. Check it out. 25%.
He came down the escalator, hair like a flame, said he'd drain the swamp, but it stayed the same. Built a kingdom of gold on a scaffolding lie. Now he's polishing statues while justice walks by. There's a woman in Texas who used to procure. Now she's teaching puppies, her conscience obscure. She whispered 2 days to the feds down in Tallahassee. Then got a room with Elizabeth Holmes and a smoothie. Secrets buried beneath the sacred scepter, where the lies get longer and the truth gets deader. No one's clean, some get clever. It's the art of the cover-up, baby, now more than ever.
25 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Mark in Sauk City, Wisconsin. Hey, Mark, what's on your mind today?
Hey there. Yeah, going through the news feed this morning, I see Ron DeSantis is complaining about the 2020 census, saying that Obama and Eric Holder goofed up the 2020 census. But correct me if I'm wrong, Donald Trump was actually president during the 2020 census
yes,
period.
and for the 4 years preceding it. Yes.
And it is just ridiculous that he's using this, because he's talking about, well, Florida's been denied, congressional seats and, the undercut of the population. Well, why does he think he thinks he can get away with this? The media's not going to challenge him on the fact
well,
that...
they did. I mean, it wasn't Obama, it was Trump, but he did have the census kind of rigged. I mean, they did undercount Hispanics in particular, because they considered basically anybody who looked Hispanic or had a Hispanic last name to be illegal. And they were trying not to count those people. And also, his intimidation of the Hispanic community caused a lot of people just not to participate in the census. So, he may have a point. It's just, blaming it on Obama seems a little weird.
Yeah, well, and why would you want to undercount the population? Because the Constitution actually requires you count everybody.
Right.
I mean,
well, Trump wants undocumented peoples, particularly Hispanics or like Haitians, black people. He wants them not to be counted because he believes that they're principally congregating in big cities, and he wants to cut funding to the big cities, which are largely run by Democrats. I'm not sure that that's true. I think an awful lot of undocumented people are in rural areas where they're doing farm work and meat packing plants and all that kind of stuff. But that's what he thinks. So, Mark, thanks for the call. Great question.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
Yeah, good talking to you. 27 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with more of your calls on the other side of the break. 202-808-9925, our number. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where smart people get their news. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Speaking the truth, the Heritage Foundation would really rather you didn't know all about, and Fox News for that matter. I'll be right back with you. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from Settlers, The Mythology of the White Proletariat, The True Story of the White Nation by Jay Sakai, published by Morningstar Press in 1989. This is from Chapter 2, The Foundations of Settler Life. The life of European settlers and the class structure of their society was abnormal because it was dependent upon a foundation of conquest, genocide, and enslavement. The myth of the self-sufficient white settler family clearing the wilderness and supporting themselves through their own initiative and hard labor is a propaganda fabrication. It is the absolute characteristic of settler society to be parasitic, dependent upon the super-exploitation of oppressed peoples for its style of life. Never has Euro-American society completely supported itself. This is the decisive factor in the consciousness of all classes and strata of white society from 1600 to now. Settler society was raised up above the level of backward old Europe by a foundation of conquest. This conquest was a miracle drug for a Europe convulsed with the reaction of decaying feudalism and deadly capitalism. Shot into the veins of the Spanish feudal nation, for instance, the miracle drug of the New World conquest gave Spain the momentary power to overrun North Africa, Holland, and Italy before her historical incident waned. Like many such fixes for Euro-Americans, this conquest was addicting. It was habit-forming and rapidly indispensable, not only culturally, but in the mechanism of an oppressor society whose lifeblood was new conquest. We'll examine this later in the relationship of settlerism to imperialism. For now, it's enough to see that this conquest is a material act of great magnitude, an economic and social event as important as the emergence of the factory system or the exploitation of petroleum in the Middle East. We stress the obvious here because the Euro-American settlers have always made light of their invasion and occupation, although the conquered territory is the precondition for their whole society. Traditionally, European settler societies throw off the propaganda smoke screens that they didn't really conquer and dispossess other nations. They claim with false modesty that they merely moved into vacant territory. So the early English settlers depicted America as empty, a howling wilderness, unsettled, sparsely populated, just waiting with a vacant sign on the door for the first lucky civilization to walk in and claim it. Theodore Roosevelt wrote defensively in 1900, quote, "The settler and pioneer have at bottom had justice on their side. This great continent could not have been kept as nothing but a game preserve for squalid savages," end of quote. It is telling that this lie is precisely the same lie put forward by white Afrikaner settlers who claim that South Africa was literally totally uninhabited by any Africans when they arrived from Europe. To universal derision, these European settlers claim to be the only rightful historic inhabitants of South Africa. Or we can hear similar defenses put forward by the European settlers of Israel, who claim that much of the Palestinian land and buildings they occupy are rightfully theirs, since the Arabs had allegedly decided to voluntarily abandon it all during the 1948-49 war. Are these kinds of tales any less preposterous than those put forward by Euro-American settlers? America was spacious and sparsely populated only because the European invaders destroyed whole civilizations and killed off millions of Native Americans to get the land and profits they wanted. We all know that when the English arrived at Virginia, for example, they encountered an urban, village-dwelling society far more skilled than they were in the arts of medicine, agriculture, fishing, and government. This civilization was reflected in a chain of 300 Indian nations and peoples stretching from the Arctic Circle to the tip of South America, many of whom had highly developed societies. There was, in fact, a greater population in these Indian nations in 1492 than in all of Western Europe. Recent scholarly estimates indicate that at the time of Columbus, there were 100 million Indians in the hemisphere, 10 million in North America, 25 million in Central Mexico, and an additional 65 million elsewhere in Central and South America. These numbers have long been concealed since they give rise to the logical question of what happened to this great mass of people. The European invaders, Spanish, Dutch, English, Portuguese, and French, simply killed off millions and millions to safeguard their conquest of the land and provide the disposable slave labor they needed to launch their new world. Conservative Western historical estimates show that the Spanish reduced, in quotes, the Indian population of their colonies from some 50 million to only 4 million by the end of the 17th century. And from the 10 million Indians who once inhabited North America, after 4 centuries of settler invasion and rule, there were in 1900 perhaps 200,000 to 300,000 surviving descendants in the United States. This was the very substantial down payment towards the continuing blood price that third world nations have to pay to sustain the Euro-American way of life. So when we hear that the settlers pushed out the Indians or forced the Indians to leave their traditional hunting grounds, we know that these are just code phrases to refer politely to the most barbaric genocide imaginable. It could well be the greatest crime in all of human history. Only here, the Adolf Eichmanns and Heinrich Himmlers had names like Benjamin Franklin and Andrew Jackson. The point is that genocide was not an accident, not an excess, not the unintended side effect of virile European growth. Genocide was the necessary and deliberate act of the capitalists and their settler shock troops. The book Settlers. Our daily song is now available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, Tidal, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and a whole bunch of other platforms. Just look for songs by Louise and Thom Hartmann. Check it out. People in the Rust Belt states know all about tariffs. They know that tariffs kept jobs in the Rust Belt states for centuries, literally, that America was built on tariffs. It's one of the reasons Donald Trump got elected in 2016 was because he talked about tariffs. But for some reason right now, you know, the Harris-Walz campaign, or Democrats in general, are reluctant to talk about tariffs. They call them sales taxes or something like that. They really need to be a little more straightforward because people, particularly in the industrial Midwest, or in the Rust Belt as we call it now, are not dumb. You know, they know what's going on. They know where we've been and how we got here. And I think it's pretty important to be talking about tariffs and what they are, how they work, and how they can bring manufacturing back home. I wrote a piece about it for Hartmann Report. It's titled, Why Trump is Wrong and Alexander Hamilton Was Right About Tariffs. And I think you'll find it absolutely fascinating at hartmannreport.com. Check it out.
There's a man with a crown made of spray-on gold, throwing tantrums in tweets, acting 5 years old. He bought the news, then broke the mic, cashed a check from CBS, killed the late night. They took Colbert off the air and put a monitor in the chair. Truth became bias, facts turned to sin. 'Cause you're not supposed to laugh at the king. You're not supposed to laugh at the king, even when he does the most ridiculous things. He's got the power, the bribes, the sting, and he's terrified of a cartoon swing. If you joke, if you mock, if you dare to sing, they'll shut you down for laughing at the king.
36 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Larry in Houston, Texas. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Isn't Vladimir Putin have a warrant against him in the International Criminal Court?
That's correct.
All right. How come we aren't going to send the marshals up to Canada and arrest him?
Because there are two countries that did not sign the agreement or treaty or whatever it is that established and authorizes and pledges participation with the International Criminal Court. And those two countries are Russia and the United States. George W. Bush pulled us out of the International Criminal Court. My recollection is around the time that he invaded Iraq, because the ICC was looking at charging him with war crimes.
Right, but I don't know.
So we have no legal authority to arrest Putin based on the ICC warrant.
Oh, no. Thank you for straightening that out for me.
Hey, you're welcome, Larry. Thanks for the call. It was a great question.
Yeah, I'm just an old veteran from 70 to 73, so have a good day, Tom.
God bless you, Larry. Thank you. Lawrence in Berkeley, California. Hey, Lawrence, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Good morning. I've got a question for you that I don't know the answer for, and it's this. The National Guard is basically hired state by state. There's the California National Guard, the New York National Guard,
with the exception of the D.C., which is federal.
Okay, so all the others are state.
Correct.
What would happen if the governor appointed a leader, I don't know if you call him a general or not, a leader of the National Guard, who would say to his troops, I'm following the governor, and you follow me, you follow what I say to do, and if the federal government comes along and tries to pick you off and say, follow the president, you can just say, no, we're following the state of California. What would happen then?
Under the Emergency Something or Other Act of 77, it might have been a little earlier, 74 or 70, it was passed in the 70s anyway. The president, during a time of national emergency, can federalize individual state National Guards. Now, and Trump declared an emergency with his executive order and then federalized the California National Guard. Gavin Newsom is suing in court. It has not, the case has not, been heard, or if it has, it's on appeal. I frankly haven't been tracking it, but I know that there's a lawsuit involved in this. And so basically what Newsom and the leader of the California National Guard decided to do was simply, go along with it for the time being and try to fight it in the courts, which is probably the most reasonable way to do it. In D.C., Trump has the absolute authority. And if you'll recall, on January 6th, when the National Guard never showed up to help the Park Police, the Capitol Police, and the Metro Police, who were being beaten, 3 of them, or 4 of them, I guess, died as a result of this criminal act that Donald Trump perpetrated. The claim from the Trump people was that Nancy Pelosi was responsible for calling out the National Guard in D.C., and she failed to do so, which was, of course, a naked lie at the time, but most Fox viewers and most Trump humpers continue to believe it. And I think Trump just gave the lie to that by invoking the National Guard himself. If he could pull out the National Guard in response to big balls getting beat up by a couple of 15-year-olds, why couldn't he pull out the National Guard when his own people were trying to murder police officers in the Capitol, in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th?
Oh, okay, but what would happen if the governor said, no, there is no emergency, I'm not going to court, I'm just not going to let you have those troops, they don't belong to you? Could he get away with that?
I don't know. It would have produced a showdown of some kind, and it probably would have brought the Supreme Court in very quickly. But I frankly don't know how that would play out, and apparently Newsom didn't want to find out. Great question, Lawrence. Great question. I'm sorry I don't have a glib answer for you. This is not a simple issue. Thank you. Christopher in Detroit, Michigan, my old stomping grounds. Hey, Christopher, what's up?
Hi, how you doing, Tom?
Good. What's up?
Okay, my question is as far as strategy for the 26 elections, right? And by my observation, I have a lot of friends that I notice that are, for social reasons, they vote Republican, but if you talk to them on economic issues, they actually tend to agree more with the Democrats. And can we get candidates or a messenger that can say, if we elect a Democrat Congress, we can get cheaper cheaper grocery bills, cheaper back-to-school shopping, cheaper Christmas bills, because we'll get rid of these tariffs, and electing a Democrat Congress can give you these type of benefits. Do you think a message like that could maybe work so we could win in slightly red districts?
I think it would, Christopher, and I guarantee you Democrats are fine-tuning that very message right now.
Who are they using to fine-tune the message right now? Because I don't see anyone in leadership.
Well, I'm not frankly sure, but I do know that, you've got Bernie out there saying what you just said. You got AOC out there saying what you said.
Yeah.
You got, Elizabeth Warren saying what you just said. Sherrod Brown now is going to run for the Senate in Ohio. He's going to try and get his old Senate seat back. God bless him. He's a good guy and a regular on our program. And in fact, we should probably get him back on to talk about this. There are Democrats who are talking about this in the Progressive Caucus as well. And I say this as a person who I actually am in favor of our having tariffs. It's just that Trump is doing it stupidly. But
unilaterally, yes.
Yeah, well, and he's doing it against countries rather than against products. The way you do tariffs is you decide which products are strategic, which products are necessary for the national security or for the functioning economy, and you put tariffs on those products. You don't put tariffs on countries. And Trump has been putting tariffs on countries because he knows that it'll force the leaders of those countries to come over here and kiss his ass and give him bribes. And
I know.
Which he just loves, and just like Tim Apple, Tim Cook just came out and gave him a big wad of 24 karat gold. Trump greedily accepts bribes, and so he's using tariffs as a way to beat other people up so that they will suck up to him and give him bribes. But it's not the right way to do it, frankly. Christopher, thanks for the call. Great question. Yep. Greg in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey, Greg, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Love the show. Just want to get your thoughts on this meeting coming up in Alaska at the end of the week. It just seems very bizarre that we don't know if Zelensky's going to be there.
He's not.
We're talking about swapping land.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think's going to happen? Like, now he's saying it's a listening session.
Yeah.
I thought this war was supposed to end in 24 hours back in January.
Yeah, right. Putin ain't going to do that. He wants Ukraine. There's this old saying that from Trump's first term in office that a lot of people figured out, that Trump says whatever the last person in the room told him, that he doesn't have any core convictions. He doesn't have any, real understanding of how our government works or what democracy is even, and doesn't frankly care. He's just looking out for himself and wants to make himself rich and powerful. That's, the bottom line. And so, the last person in the room who had talked to Trump as of 2 days ago was Putin. Putin's been on the phone with Trump 3 or 4 times now in the last month or two, and which set up this meeting. And so he had been spouting Putin talking points about, we'll give the Donbass to Russia and we'll find some land someplace that Russia can give to Ukraine or something like that, right? But then...
Is there someone in the Republican Party? It's obviously not Marco Rubio, but who is the voice of reason? Like,
there is nobody left. There is nobody left. But let me finish my thought here, Greg.
It used to be against communism.
But they don't care. That was all BS. That was actually, maybe they did care back in the day. But then the European leaders got together over this last couple of days, and this morning they had a video conference call with Zelensky and the Chancellor of Germany and Meloni, who runs Italy, the Prime Minister of Italy, and who are all on very good terms with Trump. And apparently they convinced him to be more hardline. And so after that phone call, Trump comes out and says, I'm going to be, very tough with Putin if he doesn't end this war right away. So we'll see. My guess is that Putin is going to bend him over his knee and spank him. Trump, you saw it in Helsinki. Trump reaches out to Putin with his hand, with his palm up. That's a sign of submissiveness. Typically, when you reach to shake hands with somebody, both people have their hands, up and down, vertical. But when it's palm up, that's a sign of submission, and a palm down is a sign of dominance. And Putin had his palm down. You look at those pictures of Trump, and Putin together in Helsinki and others, and it's very clear that Trump is submissive to Putin. And so I'm not optimistic that anything good is going to come out of this. But we'll see. We'll see, because
so basically we need to put our faith in the European leaders stepping up.
There you go. And they did a great job. I mean, apparently with this meeting this morning, and now Trump is talking tough talk, so we'll see where it goes. Also, J.D. Vance is not a fan of support for Ukraine, so they may not be the last ones to have talked to him.
Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's 46 minutes past the hour, just about 47, picking up your calls. I'll be right back with you in a minute. Stay with us. And welcome back, Eric in Mojave, California. Hey, Eric, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. That handshake thing is a real thing, and very few people know about it. So that was a good call on that one. Between men, that's whoever has the high hand is the dominant one.
Yeah, it is.
But I want to remind everybody. When I ran against Kevin McCarthy, I ran as a Republican, like I told you, and I did it for two reasons. One, because there's a lot of Republicans up here, and another reason was because the Republican primary is closed to anybody but Republicans. So all my friends and family, they re-registered as Republicans so they could vote for me. Mm-hmm. And I think what we need to do to fix the Texas redistricting problem is get all the Texas congressmen and all the Texas all the Texas Democratic voters to re-register as Republicans. That way, they cannot redistrict out the Democrats because the Democrats will be gone. And then two things will happen. One, you'll put more progressive people in the Republican primary, and you'll have more Republican voters that are progressive voting in the Republican primary. It will do two things. It will make hardline Republicans harder to win their own primary, and it will basically make redistricting a moot point in those red states. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, it'll be a hell of a lot easier to do in states, the roughly half of our states that have open primaries.
That's true too.
But I get your point. I mean, I lived in Michigan when
it's legal,
George Wallace
it's easy,
did this to the Democrats.
It's very simple to re-register. It doesn't take nothing, and it's something that everybody can do.
Yeah. I lived in Michigan when George Wallace did this to the Democrats. He ran on a segregation platform, and this was post-64, so this was largely, the Republican platform. And Republicans crossed over and voted for George Wallace. In fact, Michigan ended up sending George Wallace to the DNC as their nominee. So it has been done before, Eric, with some success. It's not an entirely crazy idea.
Last point, I want you to finish all your rants with this thing that Trump lies about everything. CNN did a survey in his first term that he lied over 1,000 times, and now everybody takes him at his word.
Yeah. The Washington Post documented over 30,000 lies from Trump. 30,000 of them. Eric, good points all. Thank you. Lamont in Indianapolis. Lamont, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I was just wondering, why isn't it is it against the law to call the president a liar?
It's not against the law. You can call the president a liar.
Then why don't the Democrats, every time they get on TV, radio, print, tweet, whatever, they should start out by saying that?
Because they're too damn polite.
We all know that he's a liar.
Yeah, they're just too damn polite, but they need to. I agree with you, Lamont.
They should just call him a liar, and then you can't be pro-life. You're taking away people, raising people medication, and taking away their
the other thing that they're being too nice about, and if the shoe was on the other foot, the Republicans would be doing this, is asking, was Trump raping children along with Jeffrey Epstein? Were they in on this together?
I don't know why nobody came out with the name of the president, pedophile president.
Yeah. I mean,
he makes things about everybody else.
Yep. There you go.
And then financially, just say it. They steal from the poor and they give to the rich.
Yep. And he's exploiting he's already made $3.4 billion exploiting the presidency. This guy is in it for himself and nobody else. Lamont, well said.
Say it over and over again, and then it'll catch on.
I'm with you. Thank you. 51 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. We'll continue picking up your calls. Stay with us.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled American Caesar, Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days. Check it out.
He said just day one, but we knew the score. Now he's sending troops to settle old score. From LA streets to the Capitol's dome, he's making this land feel less like home. He's a dictator with a MAGA crown.
53 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. Picking up your calls here. Ross in Fort Myers, Florida. Hey, Ross, what's up? Or Russ, excuse me.
Yeah. Hey, Tom. Yeah, it's Russ. I don't know if you remember, but you took my wife and I out to dinner about 15 years ago when you were in D.C., and we've been listening to you ever since.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you, Russ.
Say.
It's nice to hear from you again.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we all want to feel like we're doing something, and I'm doing something that I feel real good about, and that is I'm flying my flag upside down. And about 2 months ago, I got a notice from my HOA saying, don't you want to be nice like all the rest of your neighbors and, take it down in 21 days, and they went through we could fine you, and then if you don't pay the fines, we can mortgage your house.
Right.
So I put a lien on it, and of course none of it. So I got a ACLU lawyer, and we put together a letter, sent it to the HOA, and there is ample state and federal law that says I can fly my flag any way I want, as long as it's in a respectful manner, and upside down is not a problem. So I'm going to suggest that anyone who's listening, that's a way to tell your neighbors where you stand, and it's a way to find out what your neighbors think. And I live here in Fort Myers, and it's a pretty red area, so I'm not afraid to show my colors, so to speak.
That's fascinating. Russ, good on you. And thanks for sharing that story, too. And it's nice to hear from you again. Say hi to your wife for me, okay?
I sure will. Take care.
Thanks a lot, Russ. Steve in Perryville, Missouri. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I have my flag upside down as well on my chicken coop.
Wow, good on you.
So anyhow, yeah, in a red district as well. So anyhow, I have two comments about this sham census. Now, in the last 2020 census, I encouraged my entire family to fill it out as a family of color. Didn't care if it was an islander or anything other than white, to try to help out.
Are you white?
In the rural areas. Yeah, I am Irish. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're all white. We are all white.
So you're just trying to goose the numbers.
I'm encouraging people to do that. And my next question is about the census. Now, the sham census, is there going to be money, federal money, distributed after this? Because, that could be a big money grab for Trump as well.
Well, the distribution of federal money is based in part on the census. And
that's right.
Not just racially, but I mean all kinds of variables that they ask you questions about when they do the census. So,
but are they going to take money this census, even though it's 5 years? The last census was $1.5 trillion.
What do you mean?
That was That was federal money that was distributed.
Distributed to whom? Under what circumstances?
To when it's allocated to districts that that need it the most as far as not only getting the word out, but to helping, people in general, services, social services, and things like that.
I think you might be mistaking something, Steve. But I'm unaware of what you're talking about. I got to run, Steve. I'm sorry. We're out of time. Thank you for the call, though. And thanks for being with us today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us. That includes you. So get out there, get active, tag, you're it. Have a great afternoon. Be good to yourself and the folks around you. Stay safe. And I'll catch up with you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann Program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.